Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We all ready? Everybody ready? Good morning. We will call to order the Board of County Commissioners for Washoe County for the April 10th meeting. It is 10 o'clock, the appointed time, and we are going to ask Commissioner Hartung to lead us in the pledge this morning.
It would be my pleasure, Madam Chair. Would everyone please join me while we salute the greatest colors in the world? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Marcia Burke-Bigler, Chair.
Here.
Kitty Jung, Vice Chair.
Present.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Von Hartung.
Present.
Jeannie Herman.
Here.
County Manager John Slaughter.
Present.
Assistant District Attorney Paul Liparelli.
Here.
I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And with that, we will go to public comment. Mr. Chair, or Mr. Manager.
Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item is limited to 3 minutes per person. May pertain to matters both on and off the Commission agenda. The Commission will also hear public comment during individual action items, with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the Commission as a whole.
Okay, well, first on our list is Commissioner Herman. So, Commissioner Herman, we will allow you to go first.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is Jean Herman again, speaking to you from the People's Podium with some observations from District 5. We are still flooded in Lemon Valley. Our balance of water seems to have been distorted, destroyed, or misrepresented. We have introduced water into this basin from a foreign source, and that's not all bad if managed well. However, after making use of said water, it is not returned to the place of origin, therefore creating an imbalance in the basin. Common knowledge we have ignored. Proper water balance and management must return to the affected basins in the North Valleys. A pipeline to Reno's main sewer plant probably should have been built, hindsight of course, before development was approved and started. I believe that this has proven to be true. I believe that Granite Construction should be consulted for advice on how to bring Swan Lake to a safe water level. They were able to lower the Great Salt Lake in Utah a few years back when there was danger to Salt Lake City and surrounding area. They know how to do it. The future for Reno could be very bright. However, we have a serious problem and we need to honestly assess this issue with fairness to all. The wisdom of the people dictates that there is a need for action in the North Valleys, and they recently have demanded a moratorium on all building or development of any kind until the situation we have in Lemon Valley is permanently remedied. The time has come. The people have spoken. It's time for a reckoning.
I'll need the overhead, please.
Good morning, Tammy Holt-Still, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee, representative for the residents in Lemon Valley, also the Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee. The water's still there. I'm still here for the record. I am starting with today regarding information of deceiving or not telling the truth when it comes to Dwayne Smith. June 2017, I had a meeting, him, I, and Denise, and he talked about that Deodore was going to get some kind of chip seal for emergency services and for travel. It did not happen. Instead, Lemon Drive, slowly after the summer, was opened again. When it was opened, there was no chip seal done to Deodore. Then we had this winter. Deodore did not have a chip seal, Lemon Drive was closed, and then you have this that was posted on Sunday. If this was your child or your grandchild, how would you like them being in medical danger and having to wait 20 minutes for a vehicle to get there to help you? I think it's disgusting. Disappointing. Then let's go on to, it was posted on your Washoe County website that the City of Reno and Washoe County were partnering together to open Lemon Drive. As you can see by the email that you already received, that City of Reno is saying that you did the pumping. Well, then you have Dwayne Smith talking about Colo and the storm. Well, here's a picture. This was done on Good Friday. As you can see by that photo right there, the water is not up to the barrier or up to the sandbags. Then you look at, this was the 5th of April. You can see the water's up to the, and this is before the storm. This is after the storm. It really didn't change, and yet it's blamed on storms. No, this was because of pumping. When you take 1,000 gallons a minute and you take 60 minutes to an hour, that's 60,000 gallons. Times that by 24 hours. You got 1,440,000 gallons. You times that by 5 days, you've got 7,200,000 gallons of water that was pumped. And then you talk about the fact that he tells Colo that it was negligible. The definition of negligible is so small or so unimportant that it's not worth considering or insignificant. That's insignificant. And then we go to Commissioner Hertong. You always start talking about them being so right on everything. Why is it that back in 1996, USGS and U.S. Geological Survey state that there should not be any water injection?
Ross. Good morning.
Good morning. Denise Ross, Lemon Valley Flood Relief and Assistance. I'm here today to ask you to really seriously consider what Jeannie Herman had to say about the moratorium. We all know that it's a disaster out there, and it's going to take some time to get all of this worked out. Why don't you please consider, even if it's a short-term moratorium, give us a break. You take a break, and let's get a grip on the situation. It's in your hands, and it's your, well, not your job, but well, I guess it is your job to please ask for the moratorium and to call it, get the statutes, get together with the Planning Commission. We have to do something about this. We all can't just keep batting this ball back and forth. We all need to work together, and I really seriously believe that a short-term moratorium would at least let us all catch our breath, and we could get some answers to what's going on with the lake levels. The HESCO barriers I drove by this morning, they're starting to lean. You know how frightening that is? And they're out there packing it with asphalt to try to keep the water from going back over the road. Please, a moratorium is the only answer that will solve all of these issues until we get a grip. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Greta Anderson.
Good day, and thank you also for the opportunity to speak before you. I consider this really a preliminary address to the Commission, and that I plan to come back, I hope, with more information that's better researched and to be able to present my argument to you more forcefully. My heart goes out to people in Lemon Valley. I'm out in Red Rock, pretty far out in Red Rock, and we have problems also with flooding, nothing like what they've experienced. But mine is an individual case, and I know no one likes anyone to complain about parts of the government. But one thing I am going to bolster here to people who have experienced. I have experienced disdain, a dismissive attitude, and something much less than what I would expect at the engineering department, the planning department, and those agencies related to the Washoe County Community Services. In particular, Dwayne E. Smith, who addressed me about the ditch, of which I hope I have time to tell you. He said, well, if it's dammed at both ends, let's call it a lake. Now I'll tell you my situation. In 2010, as a homeowner out in Red Rock, I received an ordinance one day, 2010, when Harold Stone was the only field officer to the engineering department. And the law stated that no one could landscape or dig, I'm paraphrasing it off the top of my head, but that you could not make changes to the landscaping that then are going to alter the natural directional flow of water. So I was concerned. I received this. Well, there were ditches put in around the house that I bought in 2010. The ditches were put in 2007. So I was concerned. Was I in compliance with the county? Harold Stone at the time was the only field engineer to the engineering department. He came out to my home at least 3 occasions, and a friend of mine is here, Mr. Hawkins, who's on the Planning Commission for the city, and was witness to all of this in 2010. Luckily, my ditches were determined to be appropriate. They funneled the water out to the culvert. Water in our valley travels from south to north. So it was determined to be fine. However, in 2010 then, my neighbor, after complaining that I had a ditch in, put in a ditch. He then put up a berm wall. He then dammed the ditch at both ends. Now I'm asking you, do you know what it's like to watch a train wreck about to happen? And I imagine that these people are feeling the same way, maybe not knowing how dire things were going to get in Lemon Valley. But I was watching a train wreck. So who do you go to? You go to the people responsible for the law. And the thing I also have a problem with here, and I'm not going to have enough time to say it, is uniform code enforcement. I am telling you, I have been shut down, and my property has been flooded, and I will say this the next time I speak, so badly that our road was washed away. And still the engineering department, planning department, code enforcement has done nothing.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Next is Ms. Elise Weatherly.
Good morning, Elise Weatherly. I had spoken to somebody this morning, and I said, how do you tell people the truth? What's the best way to tell people that you're trying to tell them things that are true? And he said, pose it in questions. Well, that's a really good idea. So I see that we have some RGJ people here, I believe. And what I would like to ask Reno Gazette-Journal is, would you be willing to have something where you would have people like Skip Daly and Jill Dickman come together so that questions could be asked to these people? Perhaps I could ask Mr. Daly, why did you use the most unflattering pictures that you could to defeat your opponent last time? Is that okay with you? I see you guys' pictures out front. They're nice pictures. What would happen if somebody came up and got a picture of you throwing up? Let's say you're sick one time and somebody gets a picture of you puking. All right, is that what you're going to go around and say, this is why you should not vote for this person because look at how they look? What happens if you know, oh, by the way, why am I doing this? For documentation. I spoke to the one of the assistant district attorneys this morning and said, what I'm going to do is in the future is I'm going to start naming some names. My brother really likes Dorothy Kilgallen. I'm going to be a Dorothy Kilgallen. She almost revealed who killed President Kennedy. Guess what? She was murdered, but the coroner considered it as suicide. Imagine that. He put down the wrong reason for her death. So let's say that we have a hospital here locally that has a music program that is just to soothe the soul. I call it the sound of silence because nobody is allowed to play that piano unless you play like this particular person whose name will be named later, not right now. I'm going to go meet with them today or tomorrow and say, show me the list of all the women that get to play there. Oh, by the way, they rejected my mother and they rejected me because we do not play like this particular person. By the way, Don Ree from the Gaylords consider this person kind of a psychopath, but we don't want to challenge him because then we would be challenging the people in charge of that wonderful hospital. I will be naming names later. How about at a place that calls himself a Christian school that expels somebody and doesn't give you the reason for it, and then you take them to court and the judge sides with them, even though you find out in the small claims court that those people have been lying to you. They withheld information. How about if you've got people that say that they're a Bible church, they redact information from the Bible, but then when you confront them and say, why did you exclude this, they consider you to be the enemy. How about if I name names for those, because there will be some names named later. How about a church that says that they believe in prophecies, but they had somebody make a false prophecy and then they drove somebody out of their church? You went to those leaders and said, this person said something false, and all of a sudden you are now excluded. So if you want to see where I stand, please, thenewbereans.com, my website. Today's blog is called The Insensitivity of False Hope. Okay? Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Shannon Dobbs. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Shannon Dobbs, and I'm here to talk about agenda item 11, on-premise usage for cannabis in our community. I am a 20-year resident of Nevada. I am a commercial property and a business owner and have been in northern Nevada for over a decade. I'm also a disabled veteran, service-connected. I had a bad landing in an airborne operation over 2 decades ago. And I use cannabis. I need to in order to be able to get through my day. Especially situations like going fishing or playing around in one of the lakes that we've got up here in Washoe County, or skiing or paddleboarding or any of the other things that we like to do out in nature. Cannabis helps me to be able to get through these things. And the legal situation that we've got up here in northern Nevada right now is really difficult for people like me. My wife had to quit her job in 2013 in order to be able to take care of her disabled son. He had a skiing accident up at North Star back in 2010, temporarily paralyzed. He's been dealing with some nerve issues, grand mal seizures, a lot of different things. Cannabis helps for him. The social isolation situations that's going on with that young man right now is killing him as bad as the pain is. The fact that he can't get out in public, go see a concert, hang out with his friends because there's a legal barrier to being able to medicate in public right now, this is a ridiculous situation. We have had dispensaries legal in northern Nevada now for coming up on, what, 4 years now? And yet everybody that goes down to these legal dispensaries and buys legal cannabis in our state has no place to utilize it. We're in a crazy gray area situation, and the policies are completely unsupportable. We cannot continue in this direction. We need your help. It is time, it is past time to legalize on-premise distribution. And I got to tell you, I'm an experienced venue operator. I've been running 5-star saloon in downtown Reno for over a decade now. If you need some advice on how to put proper procedures in place, if you're concerned about potential ramifications and you got some scare factors from some people coming out of the woodwork and saying, ooh, the boogeyman's coming out, I got to tell you, there is very little that can possibly compete with Santa Crawl for chaos and insanity. And we're very used to dealing with situations like this. So you know, having a legal situation where people are imbibing cannabis, going out in public, enjoying a concert, going up and dealing with the waterways, doing all the really cool stuff that we've got in northern Nevada that I moved here for. And I got to tell you, I'm as far away from a criminal element as you could possibly imagine. You know, I've got 11 years of active military service, including 3 years in the National Guard up here in Nevada. I've had a security clearance since I was 19 years old. You know, I am a representative of the constituencies that you claim to represent. And we cannot deal with this gray area legal situation any longer. We need to find a solution in place. We need to put it in place immediately, and we need to find a solution that works for the people that live in this area. I mean, cannabis tourism, that's great. Let's talk about the money that we can bring into the state. That's awesome. Let's talk about the people that live here and that need to deal with this on a regular basis. Please help us.
Next is
Absolutely.
Mr. Sam Dene.
Sam, DNA, Dene, the heart and soul and the body and mind of Reno government. And I'm very thankful when we have law enforcement here and deputies to protect Sam against mendacities that may be taking place back out there in the audience. Makes him feel good. I am an Air Force Academy graduate. I've spent the last 25 years defending our community, the citizens, against bureaucrats and especially against the media wacko freaks. The media wacko freaks. And there he goes. He doesn't like to hear about it. Now the one wacko freak's leaving, and the other wacko freaks are over there picking their noses. At any rate, I'm responsible for 92% of the good things about Reno, starting with, shall we say, saving Burning Man, saving the Air National Guard when they wanted to get fighter planes, and I ordered Washington to give them cargo planes, all the way up to the beloved Santa Crawl that has evolved into a gigantic extravaganza. I was the driving force when they tried to get that, when they started that 5 or 6 years ago. The only citizen went to the podium and asked Reno to give them some money to get started. I've been the driving force for a lot of really good things, and I've been very successful in many, many, many things, and if you give me another 3 hours, I can start naming them. But the one problem that I've had, that I've tried the hardest to do, is to dismantle the media wacko freaks, and especially the Reno Gazette. Not that the rest of the media is not without sin, because of their insane fear and jealousy of this man who only has the welfare of Reno in his heart. The Reno Gazette is a taxpayer-funded, election-rigging monopoly. They should be investigated and dismantled. They are, what is the definition of a public body? This is a public body. And a public body has to have open meetings so people like Sam can come to the meetings, and all these people who have complaints can come here, and she's crying already about my story. Look at her. It's a public body. How do you define a public body? A public body, the number one criteria to be a public body is to receive taxpayer money. The Reno Gazette would not be in existence if they didn't receive massive amounts of taxpayer-funded money every day in those things they call public notices, from marriages to divorces to new businesses. He's nodding his head. They are a taxpayer-funded operation. They should have to obey the open meeting law. The Attorney General, if we had an honest Attorney General and Secretary of State, they would have to. The Reno Gazette would have to have open meetings just like you do, so Sam can come up there and castigate them, so we can find out what kind of lies, how are they rigging the election, what are they doing to rig the election this year. We could go to their meetings and see what they're doing behind those sneaky closed doors.
Thank you, Mr. Dene.
Did everybody understand that? You're welcome. Thank you for thanking me, by the way. You're welcome. Thank you over there, and you
Next
too.
is Miss Maureen Collins. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Maureen Collins. I'm from Old Washoe Estates. I'm speaking on agenda item 11 today for regulations for marijuana consumption lounges in unincorporated Washoe County. I was surprised by this because I hadn't heard about this before, and I understand that Vice Chair Young is become the leader in creating additional regulations centered on allowing locations for consumptions of marijuana products. And at the recommended of the staff before, was not allowed and permitted in that process. With safe and secure and healthy communities in mind, when I read through the staff report, I was kind of shocked at this poll that stating our residents, which there were 376 people polled or sent in a poll, apparently 50% were strongly in favor and 34% were strongly against, and that was only 189 people versus 129 people, with a total of 376 people in this poll. You know, who are these residents? Who was polled? The marijuana of 1960s is not the same marijuana of 2018. I could smoke one joint or consume one edible, and my reaction to it could be entirely different than the next person. To create these lounges right now, as the law stands, as I understand it, is that you go to a dispensary, buy the product for medical or recreational purposes, and then consume it in your private residence. To create these lounges so that people can come in from out of state to buy the marijuana and create these lounges so that they can consume it here within the state. I mean, I just wonder, what are people thinking of? You know, there was a reason that the state law and the regulations were put forth, and now we're changing them all of a sudden. This is all going very, very fast, and I would think that the liability and the safety of the residents in unincorporated Washoe County is of great importance and is in your hands. I sent an email to all the commissioners last night in regards to, and I would like to make sure that they read this so that you can understand. And I would like the residents to be part of this stakeholder group.
Ms. Collins, appreciate you being here this morning. Ms. Carolyn Sasek is next. Good morning, Ms. Sasek.
Hello. I live in Lemon Valley. And a couple things. One is, we were here a couple of weeks ago and Mr. Smith said that there was something to the effect of that there was no water currently impacting residents and property at this time or something to that effect. I beg to differ. Throughout the North Valleys, there's still lots of impact, lots of residents displaced. Second, Deodar. Today was the first day I heard anything about the chipping on Deodar or anything to that effect. I've called Washoe County along with many residents throughout the valley through the summer with no response from Washoe County to do anything about Deodar. Until recently, the city of Reno came out there immediately prior to the closing of Lemon Valley Road or Drive, and it opened in the last year or so. And as you know, you can now traverse Lemon Drive for who knows how long. However, Deodar looks like somebody's been out there with post hole diggers, and I believe that should be addressed again. It is absolutely treacherous out there because people also drive exceedingly too fast for a dirt road, and with having such a poor surface, it adds to the danger. I support moratorium throughout the North Valleys for all construction. Whether it's been approved or not, everything needs to be put on hold and addressed. My father worked in development and construction, and I wish he were here today. He understood water treatment plants and the like. I wish I understood it as well as he. However, I believe that you are believing, and the city of Reno are believing, that the developers are to be the source of funding to remedy the multitude of infrastructure issues that currently exist throughout the North Valleys. That is the wrong direction. The remedy needs to occur first, and then the development. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Ed Hawkins. Good morning, Mr. Hawkins.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Ed Hawkins. I come to you as a private citizen, and I'd like to get some assistance for Greta Anderson out there in the Sierra Ranchos. I was on the property 8 years ago working, putting up corrals for her, and I took a look at the ditches that were in question, and Howard Stone indeed was out there. He walked the property, 10 acres with me, and we looked at the ditches. Everything was legal. Well, she now has a neighbor here who decides he wants to make his own lake and his pond and his own roadway, and I've called Mr. Slaughter on this. Hopefully he's doing something about it, but I'd like you as a body of commissioners to put a little more pressure on Mr. Slaughter, and let's get the engineers in front of you guys for the question asking. You've got one man out there who thinks he runs the show because he's an ex-IRS agent, and it shouldn't be that way. We need your help. I want Mr. Slaughter's help. Let's get this problem rectified out there so Jeannie doesn't have to do it alone. Thank you.
Seeing no other public comment, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. And Mr. Manager.
Next item is item 4, which is Commissioners, County Managers' announcements, reports, and updates, requests for information or topics for future agendas.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioners? Mr. Manager, do you have anything?
I just wanted to maybe flag our agenda today, some timing issues. I've been contacted with interest on item 18, which is the last item on the agenda. It's a public hearing. I would ask the board maybe consider taking that item up after lunch, after our lunch break. Perhaps we could announce no sooner than 1 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. I do see Commissioner Hartung.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just first ask staff, I believe I've heard about this issue out in the north, off of Red Rock. So what I'd like to know from staff is, maybe you can get back to us, is this an issue on private property? And when you have a scenario on private property, how does code enforcement interact with them? Because I'm not convinced that we have a complete role to play because it becomes a civil matter. However, when someone violates the code, regardless of whether it's on private property, so I'd like to know what the steps are, if we could. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm glad that some numbers were brought up, and I love to hear water numbers. It's always so exciting for me. And so the number of 7.2 million gallons was thrown out there, and that's a big number. Believe me, I wouldn't want 7.2 million gallons in my yard. But for perspective purposes, you divide by 325,851 for an acre foot. That becomes, over a 4-day period of time, 22 acre feet. Swan Lake is 1,700 acre feet. It would take to move Swan Lake 1 foot 386 days at that same pumping level. You may, Ms. Still, you may call me out. That's fine. Do the math. It's very simple. It's a calculator. It's simple. Divide by 325,851, and you'll get your acre feet. Just that simple. So I would also like to point out, with the ad hominem attacks going on, that I'm sad, Commissioner Herman, that you weren't here the last time. It was stated online that we purposely moved forward with this and knew that Commissioner Herman was not going to be here. Mr. Slaughter, and this is verbatim from what he read, you can find this online. County Manager John Slaughter's comments at the beginning of item 16 at the BCC meeting of 3/27/18, verbatim. And I quote, "This item was requested by Commissioner Lucy and Hartung and others to be on the agenda for this meeting. Commissioner Herman is not here. I learned she would not be here because of an emergency. I did discuss with her as far as being on the agenda and whether we should postpone this to a future meeting, and it was her request that we move forward with this item today." Thank you, Mr. Manager, for putting that online. A couple other things. Staff, can you bring up the image of the Save Mart in Spanish Springs? We had an issue out in Spanish Springs. This is the Save Mart. These are the colors of the Save Mart. Go to the next item, if you would. This is looking at the Rise building from the north end to heading somewhat south. Next. This is the front of the Rise building. Next. There's the Rise building slightly from the south side looking north, and then finally, we have a billboard on the side of the building.
I like that color of orange.
It's garish. My residents are up in arms. Now, to Commissioner Lucy's, I pointed this out to Commissioner Lucy. He immediately had someone from the marijuana industry contact me. I consider this a billboard. This is a slap in the face to the community. They promised us during their open meetings that they would be good neighbors, they would be inconspicuous, that they would not try to do anything that was not in keeping with the neighborhood standards. I was around when the shopping center was approved. I believe in the developmental agreement. We set forth architectural and color standards that were in the original developmental agreement. I'm not convinced, I haven't seen the CC&Rs to look for this. I'm not convinced that it abides by the CC&Rs, but in my mind, this technically is a billboard. They did get a permit for a sign, but this is not what they promised us that they would do. They have promised us now that they will take this down, that they will paint over it. So again, to Commissioner Lucy's credit and to Will Adler from the marijuana industry. And their lawyer, by the way, called me and said he remembered distinctly that they promised that they would not do anything to make the building stand out, that it would just become part of the community, and no such advertising. And I don't mind the rise on the side of the building. It's just the garish color. Again, it really just is it's a slap in the community's face. And I've gotten dozens of calls on this. So we'll see if it comes down. And thank you, Commissioner Lucy, for attending to it. And then finally, chip seals. Mr. Smith, I know we've talked about this. There were a number of roads to be chip sealed in Spanish Springs. None of them have been chip sealed. I know we've used that budget in other places, and that's kind of what's happened. So I know that Spanish Springs is not the only place in the community. But if we do need to look at a single road like Deodore, if there are some issues, I'd certainly like to hear about that, and maybe staff can reach back out with us offline, and we can determine how this fits into the budget, because I know our budget dramatically changed because we had to deal with other issues. And that is all I have for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Excuse me, Hartung. Vice Chair Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have a couple of announcements to make. Last week, I was a speaker for the AmeriCorps Day of Service. As you know, we get a lot of, and from the Senior Corps, volunteer help from highly educated people that would like to further either their public service in terms of the Senior Corps, but AmeriCorps is generally students that are taking a year off or so before they go on to grad school. They get paid a small stipend, and they go out and take care of our parks and other services. If you remember, the reason why we have a senior services master plan is because of AmeriCorps volunteers, so our hats are off to them. There probably was about 250 volunteers there, even though we have about 3,000 in Northern Nevada, to receive the recognition. I also had the chance to be a guest for Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and Secretary of State John Kerry at UNR. It's the inaugural talk that Senator Reid has put together called Bipartisanship in Public Service. And I don't know if we've announced this here before, but he has donated, Senate Majority Harry Reid has donated all of his papers and writing to UNR's library system. That's a wealth of information that will be looked at for many years by historians and people wanting to know the flavor of the time, so we appreciate that. Today is the inaugural flight celebration for the first nonstop flight from the Reno Tahoe International Airport to Austin, Texas. So no longer having to stop in Vegas and then get on to go to Austin. So I thought you would like to know that. That's at 3:30 at the airport if anybody would like to go. Also, we went on meaning Assistant County Manager Kate Thomas. I always want to call you Kate Marshall, and the county manager, John Slaughter, to the Washoe County Jail tour, specifically to look at NAFCare and our medical services provider, because, you know, we're in the process of opening up new bids and seeing where we're going to go with that and how much they have changed in response to some of our concerns. And it looks like it's going great. One of the biggest issues that I think will blow you away, or blew me away, is that people that come into the jail, as you know, basically the people that we are housing in our jail, majority have some sort of mental illness or substance abuse disorder, et cetera. And the doctor there was reporting to us that they come in so malnourished that they put them on a multivitamin, give them vitamin D, they give them calcium, and they actually start making better decisions because they feel good. So that was another wrinkle in terms of how we manage a population such as this. And then I also went to the special housing unit specifically for people with severe emotional and psychological problems, just to see the way that they're treated with dignity and respect. It's a quiet area. It's based on, of course, merit and behavior. So if you ever get a chance, it's your jail, and you elect the sheriff. I highly suggest you go and do a tour. The jail looked great, I have to say that. I did tell the sheriff that on Friday as well. It was clean, it smelled good, you know, those sort of things that you look for when you're not in the business of housing human beings. Additionally, I went to along with the county manager, the Criminal Justice Advisory Council meeting. And I don't know if you've heard, commissioners, but this is a big deal for us. WestCare closed with no warning, no what's going on, and that's where all of the law enforcement officials take our inebriates, people that are too high or drunk to handle themselves, but as a way to clean them up instead of bringing them to the jail. Unfortunately, now they're all coming to the jail, and we have a problem with jail population and the fact that we don't disincentivize jail time to the cities of Reno and Sparks because they don't pay for the jail stay. 47% of all of our inmates are City of Reno accostees, I guess is the word you would say, who are there. I don't know if they need to be there or not, but that's a conversation we have to have, especially since WestCare closed. What I heard from the Criminal Justice Advisory Commission meeting was the reason why they closed is because this new behavioral health hospital is opening down south, and they hired away all their experts. Better pay, better packages, etc. But you don't blame the employees for that, but WestCare is out of the business. So we are scrambling as a community as what to do with a very vital partner, and we're hoping that this new behavioral health clinic with beds will help to bridge that gap. I also attended at the Cesar Chavez dinner, presented our resolution that you all approved to the aunt of Cesar Chavez, who came up from Central California to receive it. Many of his family was there. It was really remarkable. I want to let you know, because I've been bringing this up, well, the AARP approached me, the American Association of Retired People, and they are going to come in this month and do a lunch and learn for staff and provide lunch, which is very generous, about resources for people that are caretaking for either your parents, or you might have a developmentally disabled child, etc. Most people at one point in their life will become caregivers and have to figure out how to balance their career with that caregiving. So this will be something for our employees. You know, we have over 2,500 employees. You'd know for sure they're caregiving somewhere. So this will be a way for them to bring all the resources that are to bear here for free for those caregivers. That's for staff. And then finally, today is Women's Equal Pay Day. And I will let you know that the former Las Vegas Mayor, Jan Jones, reached out to me through an intermediary and asked that we take a survey through HR and staff to look at any pay disparity in gender, because, you know, if government of all places, there should be no pay disparity because you pay our wages. So we will get an analysis of that. It's a statewide analysis that she's the former mayor who now works for MGM, that she is starting for the whole state of Nevada to look at that. But I just want to tell you some interesting things about women not being paid the same amount for the same work that a man does, and what it does to you, whether you are a man or a woman. It'll take you three more months and 10 days as a woman to make that same amount of pay. It's 80 cents per every dollar that men pocket on a national basis. We only make 80 cents, same work. I'm saying same work. Overall, it amounts to $10,000 in lost wages. So if you have a spouse or a partner or a daughter or a mother who's working full-time, they're not helping the economy. We want them to make that extra $10,000 a year. That's more for all of us. What that would do, that extra chunk of cash, 14 more months of childcare, 74 more weeks of groceries, and an additional 10 months of rent for the average woman. So we are slowly making strides. 80 cents to $1 is still horrible, but we, as you know, as a county, are committed to that, to not having any pay disparities in any gender, race, ability, et cetera. So I'm proud to say that we were the first in the region to take that survey. I know they're going to take it to the city of Reno and Sparks, and then we will have a statewide analysis of what is the gender pay disparity for women in the state of Nevada, and we can drill down to each of the agencies, especially governmental agencies, which I think should be the most transparent about this and correct if there is any disparity for the same work and the equal pay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jung. Commissioner Herman.
Me? Okay. I agree with Commissioner Hartley about the shocking orange on that building. When I was driving into Save Mart on Sunday, I looked at that and I thought, wow, wake up. But anyhow, the reason I said to go ahead on the elevation item was that it took so long to get it on the agenda that I figured that it should be heard as soon as possible, and if that was going to work, that would, you know, get things rolling faster, and that was the reason behind it. So I'm sorry if it offended anybody. And the other thing is, I'm not sure that I totally agree with inequality in the workplace to the point where we should be even talking about it. I don't know. I've never been in any position where I got paid less than any, you know. How do you know? Because I worked with the people that, you know, got the same amount as I did in a lot of different fields. So I don't know. I know women want to be equal, and they, you know, I think that we ask a lot sometimes. So just my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a little bit of a lighter note, I want to point out that I participated last week with members of our judicial system, members from the courts, from the national, from NCJ, FCJ, which is the National Council for Juvenile and Family Court Justices, at our pinwheel ceremony out in front of the Greater Nevada baseball field to recognize that this month is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so I want people to please take note through around our courts, you know, all of our county buildings. You will notice the blue pinwheels that some of the commissioners are wearing today, and also the blue pinwheels that you'll see at the courts, in front of our county buildings, in front of the medical examiners. All, you know, signify children that are continuously within our foster care system, and children that have been affected by child abuse of some manner. And so we are obviously advocating here at Washoe County, and continuously in conjunction with our district attorney's office, our court system, and multiple nonprofit agencies to continue to eradicate that issue amongst our community. We feel very strongly here at the Commission to support those types of initiatives. You know, we currently have 900 children here in Washoe County that still are in foster care. And you know, we're very proud of the work that our Department of Human Services is doing to help minimize that number, not only from the fact of getting these children into some more permanent situations with their forever families, but from the fiscal side of things. It's very expensive. It's very costly for the taxpayers every day that these children sit in foster care, and it provides, the longer that the studies have shown that the longer that they sit in foster care, the more apt they are to return to the system later in life, and depend on county services and government services to help make their life complete. So I want to continue to urge people to get out and support, you know, obviously the National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and do what you can and participate in that. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this Commissioner Lucy's comments actually triggered something I was roped, as it were, to participate in the Heels and Hounds. And I got the cutest little puppy in the world. My dog accused me of cheating, of course. As soon as I got home, she was angry with me and very standoffish because I had the smell of another animal on me. It was a very successful event. They had about 650 people attended. It was a sold-out crowd. And it was pointed out, by the way, we only had dogs, and someone pointed out that we weren't trying to get cats adopted, sadly. Although I am not a cat person, but I do want to see animals adopted. All 8 dogs, we believe, were adopted. The puppy that I had was adopted immediately, and in fact, the young lady who had their family adopted, Little Copper was his name, was backstage with us, and she was holding him and cuddling him. But it was a really great event and very, very well attended. I was honored to be there. It was kind of interesting to actually have to go out and model clothing. It was a new thing for me. I've always been on the other side of the camera. Staff, do we have, I would actually like to talk about a moratorium. I'd love to talk about this. This was sent to me during the last flood from a fellow who lives on Bodie. And the houses on Bodie were built in the 60s and the 70s. And this is still, can we see the next one? This is on Bodie in Silver Knolls.
Oh, Silver Knolls.
In Silver Knolls, right. And so how is a moratorium going to change this? And so I'm happy to have this conversation, but my sense is, just like in Spanish Springs, we paid for a stormwater utility through development, and the residents have had to pay for it also. You can all shake your heads, but I can tell you I've been in Spanish Springs since day one, 31 years in the same house, and I've been paying in for the entire time, and development has paid its pro rata share, and it has stopped a lot of the issues. We used to see Pyramid and Eagle Canyon and La Posada flood. Actually, before Eagle Canyon was there, that intersection flooded, which was the old Spanish Springs Road punch-out where La Posada is. It does not flood as badly now that we have the stormwater utility in with thousands of houses. So I'm happy to have this conversation. I'm happy to talk about it to see how we can move forward. But here's what I would tell you, and this is something that I've talked to a number of developers on, getting them to do off-site improvements. Improvements that would benefit the existing neighborhoods. I just pulled up one house right on Bodie. It was built in 1960. The code book probably looked like a pad of paper in 1960. In fact, my pack of gum here would be thicker than the code book in 1960. So, you know, these issues have existed for years, but I'm happy to have this conversation, and I'd like staff to, I'll work backwards with staff to, to talk about what this would actually look like. And then also, I neglected to ask staff, meet with me offline and give me some timing on the questions that I asked in terms of the home elevations. And some of the questions I asked will not pertain to all of the homes out there. I know that there are 9 that we're talking about. Maybe some of them we can possibly work out a deal where we can move them instead of elevating them, move them to a new parcel, if that's something that is viable. If elevation is viable, I'm willing to talk about it again. If FEMA will participate with us, that's the key. And then I want to talk about the home purchase program and the timing of that and where we are with FEMA. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Vice Chair Jung.
Oh, I just wanted to say. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Commissioner Hartung, I saw you on the news, And you did it perfectly. You even put on your sunglasses. You were modeling sunglasses and a dog and...
Those are my glasses, they weren't theirs.
Oh, they were? Well, that was just your little shtick at the end. I liked it. You look so handsome, and I can't believe that that's the first time you've ever modeled. You're built for it. You looked great, and I thought it was neat to see it.
It was a wonderful event.
Yeah.
Jung. I was surprised I didn't see you there because I know how passionate you are about it.
I am. I've been a little sick, but I'm...
And it's, you know, it was a good event.
You looked great.
When you adopt animals, it's always a good thing.
Yes, and you look terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jung. Well, in closing, since we've spent a lot of time on this, I will simply say that I'm curious about the moratorium issue largely, and I would like, we don't have to bring it back to this. We can if staff and the manager decides that it should be a public issue. But there was a blurb in a newsletter that was put out, and I believe it was put out by the Planning Commission, and I forwarded it to the manager so that he could see it. But essentially what it said was it approved a housing development and for Washoe County. It didn't, that approval did not come to us. So this commission did not get to see that. Had it come to us, or had somebody appealed it and it came to us, I was out there with staff and with the manager. I'd have been opposed to it. I would have been opposed to it because there's water where they're proposing to build that. But the Planning Commission approved it. We did not. And I have an issue with that. I don't think the Planning Commission should be just approving things that then the elected officials are going to have to be responsible for. That's not to say in any way that I believe a moratorium will solve the problem. I don't. But I do find it interesting that the Planning Commission approves things that this commission never gets to see, but we have to take the flack on it, and that's offensive to me as an elected official. So then in closing, I want to say I'm sorry that Commissioner Hartung that I couldn't be there. I was going to be there, but I had this little accident with my foot. And I wasn't going to go to an event wearing a boot on my foot. I'm sorry. I do come to this meeting wearing a boot, but I wasn't going to a very nice dress event wearing a boot on my foot. So I didn't go because of that reason. But I want to take this opportunity to really thank all of the public who were in the park when I damaged my ego by falling in front of everybody. And when I was walking my dogs rather than my 2 adopted Humane Society dogs, by the way, rather than paying attention to where I was walking, I was paying attention to where they were walking. But there were probably 15 people in the park. They were all wonderful. They all came running over to take care of me. Someone called 911. I ended up driving myself to the urgent care, which is right up the street from where the park is. But the fire truck did come, the Reno fire truck did come, and I want to tell you, there were 3 of the most beautiful firefighters who came and took care of me, picked me up. Oh my, it was terrific. Carried me to my car after they iced my ankle, and I just want to go on record of saying thank you to the people who were in that park, and thank you to those 3 wonderful Reno firefighters who were there doing just their job, but taking care of someone who was dumb enough to pay attention to dogs rather than where she was walking. And with that, I see Commissioner Hartung has one last thing he'd like to say.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I had heard the story slightly different. But,
I'm sure you heard
Commissioner
it was
Lucy showed me a bruise that he claimed was. I'm just saying. But Mr. Lipparelli, all kidding aside, I believe that the Planning Commission's role is called out in NRS, and maybe you could bring us back an item. I believe the way that it's set up, in fact, I know it is. It's set up via NRS. I think it's set up in NRS, isn't it, Mr. Lipparelli, the Planning Commission?
Madam Chair, I'll be happy to report back on all this stuff.
Okay.
Our agenda today isn't set up.
Isn't styled for this, but
discussion on moratoria.
But what I'd like to have is not so much moratoria discussion, Mr. Lipparelli, but a discussion of the Planning Commission's role in being the almost deciding body of planning items unless there's an appeal process. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Lucy.
Madam Chair, thank you really quick. And just really quick to dovetail off of what Commissioner Hartung's saying, if we are going to have a discussion about moratorium, and I'd like to, because we constantly continuously hear not only from the cities but also from the county, is the issue within the region of affordable housing and housing in general and the availability of housing. What are we going to do? How are we going to properly plan for that? And so if a moratorium is issued for an area such as the North Valleys, not saying wrong or right, what are we going to do to place certain housing, because it is a responsibility of this board and this commission to continue to allow for certain development. So I would like that to be part of that discussion. Manager Slaughter, is that what we will be doing for affordable housing and different things like that, because I have received a number of phone calls from constituents, because we're going to have to put some of those housing in different places and what that's going to look like. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. I think that's a valid point. We are worried about affordable housing. And with that, we will close number 4 and move on. Mr. Manager, this is you.
Our next item is a proclamation. This is item 5. And this is a proclamation proclaiming April 8, 2018 through April 14, 2018 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And Commissioner Lucy is here to read the proclamation. I know we have several others in the audience who are going to join. I'd invite anyone down to do that who's here for this item.
Good morning.
Commissioner.
Good morning. Members of the Commission, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I have with us today Mr. Scott Scheid, who will be accepting the proclamation today. It gives me great pleasure, and thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing, obviously we usually don't have proclamations on days like this. They do occur usually in the middle of the month for our middle meetings, but I felt it prudent that we have this today, being that our meeting falls right in the midst of National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And so one of the challenges that we have here and within our region, within our state, and within our country is that so often do the criminals of many crimes have many rights once they're incarcerated, once they've been arrested. There are certain rules and regulations that all of our law enforcement, our incarceration, our DAs have to abide by to provide these individuals with rights. However, the one person that really truly suffers from all of these criminal activities, and some that really suffers from any act of a violent crime, are the victims. The victims have very few rights in regards to where individuals go once they're incarcerated, when their parole hearings are, the families of these individuals, whether it be violent, such as violent as murder, or rape victims of those caliber, don't get the rights that they truly deserve. And I think it's something that we need to, as a community, as a state, and as a country, continue to advocate for and support anything we can do from a governmental standpoint to push forward. So I'd like to read this proclamation today from Washoe County in support of this National Crime Victims Week. The proclamation reads, whereas Washoe County joins with local law enforcement, local and state victims advocacy group, assistant organizations of the Office for Victims of Crime in the U.S. Department of Justice to call for support of all victims. And whereas more than 95,000 instances of violent crimes or property crimes were reported by law enforcement in a recent year, per the Nevada Uniform Crime Report of 2016. And whereas in Nevada, a violent crime occurred every 26 minutes and 32 seconds. A property crime occurred every 4 minutes and 38 seconds during the recent year, according to UCR of 2016. And whereas the Crime Victims' Rights Week serves to recognize the needs for crime victims and the importance of those securing their voices and their rights. And whereas this sentiment is embodied in this year's national theme, expand the circle and reach all victims. And whereas we believe victims of crime should always be treated with fairness and respect throughout the criminal justice process, protected from the defendants, reasonably held to public proceedings regarding their case, and given voice through their process of the case. And now, therefore, the Washoe County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 8th, 2018 through April 14th, 2018 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. and join representatives of local law enforcement, advocacy, and assistant agencies statewide to provide assistance and a stronger voice for Nevadans who have been a victim of crime. Adopted this 10th day of April 2018, signed by our chair, Commissioner Marcia Burke-Bigler. And I'd like to have Scott say a few words at this time. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of Marcy's Law for Nevada and our domestic violence prevention partners, I want to thank the Washoe County Commission for recognizing Crime Victims' Rights Week. Any one of us can be a victim of crime regardless of race, socioeconomic status, or political ideology. And although none of us can predict the future, Marcy's Law for Nevada would ensure that victims have the right to notification, being told of any releases or hearings that are pertinent to their case, the right to privacy, being free from harassment from the accused, the right to a voice during the process, and being able to give a victim impact statement and speak their piece, and the right to full and timely restitution. We are proud to have strong bipartisan support behind this effort, and we are looking forward to having this community support and voting yes on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. I have several people who would like to speak, so if you two just want to step back. And Commissioner Herman, and why don't you just speak right from the dais?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
I am in 100% in favor of what you're doing. It's a wonderful, wonderful proclamation, and what you're doing is wonderful. I have been the victim of crime, and I can truly relate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. And then I have Mr. Sam Dene.
Sam, DNA, Dene, the heart and soul and the body and mind of Reno government. What we have here is dedicating a week. It should be a whole year. It should be infinitely a week dedicated to the National Crime Victims' Rights Week. I arguably am the victim of more crimes. First of all, I should define the word crime, dictionary. Crime is the evil, shameful wrongdoing. I am the victim of crimes of commission and omission every week for the last 25 years. I wish I had the capability of putting the perpetrators, at least dismantling them, if not putting them in prison where they belong. I am the victim of crimes by a public organization that commits crimes every week. Like I said, crimes of omission and commission, and I'm speaking of the Reno Gazette-Journal. It is a public body, and they commit crimes by not reporting the truth that I bring to these podiums every week. A crime of omission, a crime of cowardice, a crime of fear, and I am a victim. I am a victim. I'm not whining, but I am a victim. And by the way, I'm like Senator Reid, I'm going to donate my thousands of YouTubes of brilliant oratory prognostications to the UNR. And mine are certainly at least as exciting as his books. I'll guarantee you that. So, as a victim of crime, yeah, I could go on and on. The problem is that the perpetrators always get the announcements. The victims, rarely do you hear about them unless it's something really dynamic that happened. As I close out, the Reno Gazette is a public body, and they violate the law every day because they should have to have open meeting, just like you people do up there. When they do not have the open meetings, they're committing a crime, and they're also committing the crimes of omission when they do not report. And it's not like I'm not here every single day. I'm here every day, and I'm responsible for so many important things, and it really hurts my heart for I wish the district attorney would go and put those people in handcuffs right now, order them to have the open meeting so I can go down there and castigate them in person instead of in third person. There's the medium wacko freaks over there committing crimes. You will not hear about this today. You will not read about this. I got my $100 bill that bets those people, if that man tried to report my brilliant oratory, he would lose his job. Who knows what would happen to those people? Did everybody understand what I just said? I hope so. Probably not the standard things that you hear. And interesting. I'll donate this YouTube to the UNR along with Senator Reed's stuff.
Thank you very much. We didn't yet. Let's do a picture. We normally do a photo with that, and although it's a little tough to stand up after that, if we could do a photo, we'd appreciate it. Commissioners? You can't take pictures from the knees down.
Yeah.
Requested the chair. Requested the chair.
These are the guys, you let them in there. Let them in. These are the guys. All right, here we go. 3, 2, one more. 3, 2.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Manager, we will move on to 6.
Yes, Madam Chair, item 6 is your consent agenda. Today's consent agenda consists of items.
Excuse me. We need a motion on the proclamation.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need a
correct.
motion. Commissioner Lucy.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion, move to approve the proclamation.
We have a motion and a second. We've done public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we're going to vote on the screen. Thank you very much. Please cast your vote, and then please affirm your vote on the screen. Motion carries 5-0, and we will then move on to 6. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for reminding me what I was doing.
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. And our next item is item 6, your consent agenda, consisting of items 6A1 through 6E2 today.
Do you have any changes to the agenda, to the consent agenda? Commissioners, anybody have? Commissioner Herman.
I think that it would be a good idea if we had a little explanation of this one so that there's no confusion. There was...
Which item?
Item 6E1.
Same one. I know what it is.
6D?
E1.
6E1?
6 Edward 1,
And
Madam Chair.
what about... Okay.
If we could, if it's okay, we can have an explanation, leave it in consent. Are you okay with that? Or
I'm okay with that. I mean, I know exactly what it is,
Okay.
Mr. Manager.
So let me, I'll have staff come up. I'll read the item so the public knows what we're talking about. As I read this, staff will come up to help us out on the explanation. This is item 6E1. This is approval of a resolution calling a public hearing to be set for May 8, 2018 on the amendment of the boundaries of District Number 24, Grand Water Remediation, Central Turkey Meadows Remediation District in Washoe County, Nevada, providing for a notice of a hearing and providing other matters related thereto.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. Chris Benedict, I'm the Remediation District Program Manager, and are we not on? There it is. Should be on now. No. Okay.
Yes.
Chris Benedict, the Remediation District Program Manager, Community Services Department. This is a item that we do every year. It's the first step in a 3-step process that's related to District 24 is the Central Truckee Meadows Remediation District. It was created back in 1995 by state statute, and that statute requires that every year when the boundaries are amended, that we start that process with this resolution. And we do change the boundaries every year as the water purveyors add customers to their service territory. So this is a standard procedure. It's happened every year since probably 1998. and it's based on changing the water purveyor's service area boundaries. And it's driven by the NRS. Does that?
Okay. Commissioner Hartung, did you have a question?
I do, Madam Chair. And so Chris, and I know what this is. So we continue to expand the boundaries. Are we finding PCEs in the groundwater farther and farther out from the core? Because I know originally, excuse me, having a tough time today. I know originally we found it. This is contaminants. Just so that we have sort of a higher level knowledge of this, and we get this on the record. These are contaminants from dry cleaners, things like automobile repair shops that use certain kinds of solvents and et cetera. They're volatiles in nature, and I know that we've been removing them at certain wells and et cetera. And I know that actually the Water Innovation Campus is working on a program whereby their process will also remove these types of contaminants. But are we seeing the plume move? Is that why we're increasing the boundaries?
No, I guess just to make this clear, and you will see more about this in these next two steps in the process when we introduce the actual boundary ordinance. But there are two components to the remediation district boundaries. There is the contaminant boundary, and that is the area where the historical contamination is known to exist. That area has actually shrunk in size.
Okay, good.
It's gone from about 20 square miles to about 9 square miles.
Okay, nice.
And this boundary that increases every year is the service area boundary of the water companies who have wells in the impacted area.
Okay.
So it is strictly a function of development.
Okay.
And so the service area boundary increases, but the contaminant boundary has shrunk. Does
Good.
that?
Commissioner Herman, did that answer your question?
I just wanted the public to understand that, because it's a pretty important issue.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, I see no, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
I see no fiscal impact in increasing the boundaries. There is still a fiscal impact to this of treating that water. I know we've put millions of dollars aside over the years to remove the PCEs.
Yes, in this particular staff item, there's no fiscal impact related to the resolution.
Right.
And as you see with the next two steps, when we introduce the two ordinances,
Right.
it will talk directly about the details
Right.
of the boundary change and then the associated fee ordinance.
Okay.
So you will see all those details in those next steps.
Good. Okay, yeah, and again, I understood it. I actually had it marked as well, Madam Chair, to just make a comment on it because I think it's important.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions on any other item? Okay, we've done public comment, so we will call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Do we have a motion?
Oh, we do
So
need a
moved.
motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hartung and a second by Vice Chair Jung. And now we've done public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And motion carries 5-0. And we are moving on to number 7, Mr. Manager.
Take the block.
Oh, let's block vote. Commissioner, our Vice Chair Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to put this in a form of a motion that we put items 7, 8, 9, and 10 in a block vote.
Okay, Mr. Manager.
I think second.
Oh, we have a second from Commissioner Hartung. Mr. Manager, would you read those for us, please?
Happy to. Item 7 is a recommendation to approve a retroactive extension of the contract for 3 months for Allied Universal Security Services for Courthouse Security Officer Services to support the Washington County Security System. If approved, authorize the purchasing contracts manager to execute the Courthouse Security Officer Services Agreement between Allied Universal Security Services and Washoe County for the term of April 1, 2018 through June 30, 2018. The estimated contracted amount for this 3-month extension is $188,000. If approved, authorize purchasing contract manager to execute the agreement. Item 8 is a recommendation to approve Washoe County leave and accommodations for victims of domestic violence policy. Item 9 is a recommendation to approve interstate interlocal contract between public agencies, the County of Washoe, 2nd Judicial District Court, and the State of Nevada, Department of Health and Human Services, and Division of Welfare and Supportive Services for Master's System July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2022, for the purpose of enforcing child support obligations, locating non-custodial parents, establishing paternity, obtaining child support, and adjusting support orders. The estimated budget for these services for fiscal years 2018-19, 2019-20, 2020-21, and 2021-22 is approximately $1,271,116, reimbursed through federal Title IV-D funds. No matches required. And item 10 is a recommendation to certify charges, levy, and direct the treasurer to collect $32,538.75 in special assessments for fiscal year 2018-19 as requested by the state engineer of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for Honey Lake Valley Groundwater Basin in the amount of $1,371.22, Wallapai Flat Water District in the amount of $3,123.05, Santa Medio Desert District in the amount of $3,435.10, Warm Springs Valley Groundwater Basin in the amount of $2,543.50, Washoe Valley Groundwater Basin, $2,565.88, Warm Springs Winnemucca Creek Basin in the amount of $4,000, Cold Springs Valley Groundwater Basin with $0, Lake Tahoe Groundwater Basin, $1,000, Lemon Valley Water District, $2,500. No assessment is required due to sufficient cash resources in Lemon Valley Water District Fund. Pleasant Valley Groundwater Basin, $2,500. Spanish Springs Valley Groundwater Basin, $3,000. Tracy Segment Groundwater Basin, $2,000. Truckee Canyon Segment Groundwater Basin, $2,000. And Truckee Meadows Sun Valley Basin, $2,500. The Board of Commissioners authorized the county treasurer to remove uncollectible assessments and/or correct assessments on the tax rolls requested by the Division of Water Resources and direct the comptroller to pay the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources as requested with the requested funds. Madam Chair, could I make one comment regarding item 8? This is the recommendation to approve the Washoe County's leave and accommodations for victims of domestic violence policy. That is something that we already do. This is codifying requirements from the last legislative session. We already allow for that type of leave. We're required by statute to do that, even though we're already doing it. So this is just codifying that practice that we currently have.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I see Commissioner Herman has a question or a comment regarding item 10.
Just a little one, just to explain to the public of what
Certainly.
About the Lemon Valley one.
I'll turn it to Dave Solero.
Good morning. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Item number 10, specific to Lemon Valley Water District. So we are as staff trying to determine whether there was ever a Lemon Valley Water District in title, and there has not been. This is an accounting definition within our own system within Washoe County, whereby we have a fund that the money comes in from the property taxes, it goes into the fund, and then it goes out to the state engineer. There's a balance of money associated with Lemon Valley, about $15,000, and we are simply utilizing those funds that have already been collected to pass on to the state engineer. So, there's been some question whether there's an actual water district out in Lemon Valley, and there's not. Tumwa does provide services in parts of Lemon Valley, but these are charges for the state engineer to be able to monitor the groundwater basin in Lemon Valley. There's already a pot of money that's been collected over the years that is going to pass forward to pay this charge to the state.
Thank you, Mr. Solero. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Herman? Okay. I don't see any other public comments. I can't move back to any other public comments. Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk, thank you. Couldn't get the word.
The only names I saw under the public comments were Commissioner Herman.
Okay.
On 7, 9, and 10. Did you have questions on the other items?
Commissioner Herman?
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so seeing no other public comment, we have a motion? And we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Okay, commissioners, please cast your vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And please affirm your vote on the screen. The motion carries 5-0, and we will move on. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, I believe we then are now on item 11. And this is discussion, direction to staff on establishing considerations for regulations for marijuana consumption lounges in unincorporated Washoe County.
Okay. Mr. Solero.
Good morning. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. So as the board will recall, we are in the process right now of providing for permanent regulations associated with marijuana establishments within Washoe County. There's a second reading a little bit later on the agenda for our regulations regarding that. However, during the process, the question regarding marijuana consumption lounges came up at our strategic planning retreat in January. This board had specifically, at staff's request, kept that discussion out of our permanent regulations so that we could get the permanent regulations up and running in time for our temporary quick start regulations to expire. So the board is on track with the schedule set by staff to complete that action so that our current dispensaries and any future dispensaries that are going through the state process and the county process can open. So it's time to have the discussion whether this body wants staff to continue to move forward specific to consumption lounges and their impact, potential impact within Washoe County, unincorporated Washoe County. Cities of Reno and City of Sparks would have to do their own regulations. This is a specific discussion to unincorporated Washoe County. I want to make sure that's clear on the record so that nobody thinks that this is a blanket discussion for all of Washoe County. This is unincorporated Washoe County, where staff is coming to the board, and we really want to understand board's direction on whether we should move forward as a staff working group associated with the marijuana strategic objective to review, understand, craft language associated with consumption lounges within Washoe County. As you've heard from public, we've heard through this process for over 2 years now concerns related to marijuana. Commissioner Jung has brought forward from the industry and other locations discussions she's had where, industry, hotels, tourism are requesting a location because right now the state law is pretty specific, at least regulated state law from the state taxation, that you cannot consume this in a public place. So that means your residence, and really that's all it means. So there's some concern out there regarding whether consumption is occurring in tourist cars, and then those people are driving under the influence on our streets. So as part of the discussion, you heard some public comment earlier today relating to a survey. That was part of the process we went through with our permanent regulations. We put a question in regarding consumption lounges and whether there was any appetite for our citizens to provide feedback for that, and it was split. We have a very divided citizen group on this topic. However, we got some valuable comments back through that process related to specific concerns with public safety, traffic safety, patron safety that might frequent these locations. And then there were some questions regarding secondhand smoke and what that impact is. Those are all things that can be regulated through this process. There's plenty of background and history and knowledge and understanding and technology in place to take care of some of those concerns. But really, staff needs direction from this board to move forward. And so with that, I will leave it up to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Solero, and I do have a couple of commissioners who have questions, but I want to just, if you would put on the record, where else in the state of Nevada are these lounges available?
So currently, there are no regulations within the state of Nevada pertaining to consumption lounges.
So there are no regulated lounges and there are no regulations. So the state hasn't acted on this, the state legislature hasn't acted on this?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hartung.
And forgive me, I'm having a little stomach upset today. Have the cities moved on this at all, Mr. Solero? Is there any? Are they holding meetings? Are they talking about it? What's the to dovetail on the chair's question?
So currently, we've been in contact with the cities of Reno and Sparks, and we've just had discussions. I think at the staff level, they're discussing this, but there's not been a public meeting where this has been discussed with any of the commissions.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Commissioner Hartung. Vice Chairman Jung.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. either this is for you, Mr. Solaro, or for the Assistant District Attorney, Mr. Liparelli. I believe there is a Legislative Council Bureau decision that says this is allowed based on and enabled based on the question, the state question, or state question 2, in which a vast majority of voters voted for. Is that true or correct? Or false? It's true and correct. It's true and correct. You like that?
For the Commissioner, I do have the Legislative Council Bureau conclusion that I'd like to go ahead and read into the record. So it says, in conclusion, is the opinion of this office that under current law, 1, a business may establish and operate a lounge or other facility or special event at which patrons of the business are allowed to use marijuana in compliance with state law, and 2, a county, city, or town may adopt and enforce an ordinance which requires such a business to purchase a business license or permit and comply with any applicable regulations or other restrictions imposed by the county, city, or town. So I read that into the record, for the benefit of the Commissioner related to the Legislative Council Bureau's opinion as requested by Senator Sagerblum.
So my point of that is, Madam Chairwoman, it is enabled and it is according to the law. This is what voters voted for. All that we are asking here is that staff can move forward, come up with best practices, deal with any of the speculatory pitfalls or unintended consequences, but without that, staff cannot go any further because we have the 3-hour staff rule. So one thing I want to rebuke about what you said, if anybody else has done this, we were the first county in the state, am I correct, Mr. Stolaro, to come up with regulations for dispensaries even before the state came back with their recommendations?
I would love to say I knew that answer, but that was a little bit before my time.
The truth is we were, and we started doing developmental code updates. We started doing the sheriff's deputies updates. We did it with, I'm the chair of the Board of Health. We had to update our ordinances there. So we were the first in the state to do this, the first county. And at the time, I remember certain people on this board that are still here that said, well, let's see what Clark County does. No, we are the model of this state. And we were the ones that pulled out of this recession much quicker and with a much more adroit turnaround than anybody else. So I do not want, thank you, good word, adroit. I am not going to sit here and wait for somebody else to do it better. The state has already said we can do it, and here's what I am hearing. I was a speaker at the inaugural cannabis convention this weekend on Saturday. There was over 1,000 people there at 10 o'clock in the morning. And every single industry expert and casino operators and hotel motel operators, which, by the way, you're the chair of the Reno Sparks Visitors Authority. We are begging people to come here to have a good time, yet we tell them nowhere that they can consume their product because it's not allowed in gambling establishments. And if they're smoking flower, they get a lovely bill once they get home to wherever they came from that says, here's a $500 cleaning fee. So we're saying, welcome to Northern Nevada and Washoe County. This now voters have agreed is something that we can use recreationally. But then we say, do it in your car, which is the most dangerous place for people to do it. If they don't live here or know somebody with a private residence, they have nowhere to do it. So the casinos are begging us to give them someplace that they can say, go smoke there or imbibe there, because the gaming board came out very strong that will not be allowed in any gaming establishments. And now our hotel motel industry is begging us, where do we send these people? Because we know if we're sending them a cleaning fee, what's the likelihood they'd ever come back? So this is not whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I am asking the commission, please give staff more than 3 hours so that they can explore this. This is being done in other states, so we don't have to recreate the wheel, but what we can do, like we did as a state, we have the strictest marijuana dispensary cultivation and production in all of these United States because we did our due diligence. When I say we, it's the royal we. Senator Segerblum went to, with the whole cadre of staff and legislative analysts, to Arizona, to Washington, to Oregon, to make sure, California, that we didn't replicate some of the problems that we had. And one of the things that came out of that, which you should be proud of, if you're concerned about children and others getting a hold of it, one major law that came out of that, if you would like to go to a dispensary to see for yourself, you don't have to believe me, all you have to be is 21 or older, is that we don't have any product that looks like candy, cereal, lollipops, anything that other states did really wrong, because any average little kid would pick it up and eat it. So I am just beseeching you on behalf of the tourism industry, on behalf of the dispensaries themselves, the dispensaries, when people come and buy it, they say, where can we smoke it? They go, we're at a loss. We have nowhere to send you. So that is all I'm asking for today. Give us more than 3 hours. Let us look at the speculation that people will drive impaired. Okay, like how do you fix that? Maybe have a relationship with Uber. I don't know, and I don't want to sit up here speculating and finding all the reasons why this could go wrong or right. I want staff to do their due diligence as subject matter experts, or soon to be further subject matter experts. Sarah Tone is a subject matter expert of this. Give her more time so that she can say to us, this is what could go wrong, this can go right, because I don't want to wait, and I've heard you guys say this, and I've heard a lot of people in the state say this, let's wait and see what the legislature does in the next session. No. You know, we beg all the time that we want home rule. The moment we have home rule, we go, get it away from me. AB 46 is an example. I mean, I can go on and on when we don't want home rule. So that's all I am beseeching you. This is our job. Ask questions, ask staff to become a subject matter expert, and then we'll figure out from there where we would go. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Jung. Mr. Luparelli.
Madam Chair, the item today is the board's opportunity to give direction to the staff on the development of a policy about how and if to authorize and regulate this kind of an activity. I just wanted to note for the record, and I didn't want my silence to be taken in any other way, I have great respect for my fellow public attorneys, but the opinion of the LCB counsel to a senator does not bind the county. It is not legal advice to the county. You get your legal advice from the elected DA. So while it's often helpful to us and it's guidance, it's not necessarily another public attorney's view of the law. And that's true for city attorneys, district attorneys, and the Attorney General as well, who advises state agencies. So I'm happy to take a look at opinions of other lawyers and consider them, but I just didn't want the entry of that, the note of that item on the record to be taken as gospel in Washoe County. It's just one lawyer's opinion, just like mine. You can take it or leave it.
Thank you, Mr. Luparelli. Commissioner Lucy.
Madam Chair, thank you. And, you know, I sit here challenged and continuously I have kicked this idea around in my head a number of times. You know, we're only coming off a very brief time when we've had the allowance of the recreational usage within the unincorporated county. We've had medicinal for quite some time, but just the brief, and not even, and still to this day, not all of the 6 licenses of our dispensaries are open within the unincorporated county yet. And I have some challenges with this. Not that what Commissioner Jung is advocating for the study and the consideration of this is wrong. I just feel that the timing at this time is still premature. I don't feel that this is the right thing. And here's my challenges with it. One, from my standpoint, and I would be remiss if I didn't make these points, and if you go to a bar here, which I sit as the chairman of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, and we're responsible for tourism to the area. We have a number of bars. We've prided ourselves in northern Nevada for our entertainment and tourism capabilities here, and urge many citizens to come to our area to recreate. However, when you go to a bar, you can go to a bar and enjoy a meal, and you can have a glass of wine, you can have a cocktail, you could have a beer, and know that you're not going there to get drunk. You're going there to enjoy yourself and maybe have a cocktail and leave. However, I feel that and this is my opinion and my opinion alone, that if you were to go to a facility for a recreational lounge for marijuana, you're going there with the intent to get high. You're to utilize the product, and to me, that's not really what, maybe a good majority of the citizens did approve, and they did, and most citizens, and that's why we do have recreational. They approve the ability to utilize recreational marijuana here within Washoe County, and within the state. However, for those citizens that did not, I feel concerned that this is creating an opportunity for those citizens that were protected by making sure that these individuals that choose to participate in recreational marijuana still go home to their residence and to their place of business. And from my discussion with the property owners that I've had in the tourism, they're not big advocates for, consumption lounges. They may be advocates because they don't want them within their properties. But they're not advocates for lounges. They're not advocates for individuals to come and recreate. They want them to come and recreate in a safe manner, and they're not convinced that this is a truly safe manner or conducive for Northern Nevada. And here's my other issue about it being in the unincorporated area. In the unincorporated area, we don't have mass transit. We don't have. We are struggled with our sheriffs and our law enforcement to properly maintain and patrol a good portion of our unincorporated area with the minimal police staff and sheriffs that we have, and we're hoping to obviously increase that, but that's a challenge as it is. And they're already stretched thin when on patrol to deal with the crimes that they do. Adding the ability for individuals to participate in a lounge of this manner, and we all know it. Every individual knows that someone's going to participate in a recreational lounge based upon their ability to do this. If this become reality, they'll drive. They'll leave. They are not going to sit. An individual is not going to sit at a recreational marijuana lounge once they are intoxicated or inebriated. They have nowhere to go unless they get a cab or unless they get someone to drive them home. And so I think we're not deterring from the problem. We're creating more problems. And so from my standpoint, I can't support this. I can't get behind this. I think this is too early. I think we still need some time to work with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a tendency to agree with Commissioner Lucy. I have thought verbatim to Commissioner Lucy's comments about I periodically have a beer. I love a glass of wine. I love a taste of scotch for the enjoyment of the scotch itself, not for the alcohol content, but for the craft and the distiller's acumen that went into it. No different than winemaking. I have a very difficult time, and I'm trying to understand how we would separate a lounge from a dispensary, because the first thing dispensaries are going to want is a lounge. They're going to want that as soon as if we open this up. I don't care whether it's a tavern. I don't care whether it's a restaurant that serves alcohol. I don't care what it is. Anybody who drives under the influence of anything, whether it's alcohol, whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's marijuana, it doesn't make any difference to me. Under the influence is under the influence. And I fear for every single person in this audience going home, getting on the road every single day, and tangling with someone who has been drinking. Our own Judge Hardy had a scenario where he lost his daughter to a drunk driver. I recognize the differentiation between the two, but I will tell you that the current level of potency of marijuana is, and the stuff's vicious. It's not what we saw in the 70s by any stretch of the mile. I'm concerned also like Commissioner Lucy is, with law enforcement. I don't think we know what the impact is in terms of the law enforcement community. We have no viable methodology to test someone for their level of impairedness. That's the problem that I have. I know they can sort of come up with sort of a field sobriety test, but I still have fear that someone who is not high, who's involved in a horrific accident, and they do a blood test on them because of, I believe it's called the per se law, that if there is THC in your system, you could be charged. So I'm still concerned with that. I've had conversations with hoteliers. Not one of them, and I'm not talking about people who just work in the hotels, I'm talking about the people who own the hotels. I've had direct conversations with hotel owners, very large ones, and every single one of them has told me they don't want it to occur on their premises. So they want us to deal with this. And so on that note, we have no hotels in the unincorporated area of the county. So it doesn't, we don't have those large gaming facilities. And then, and I do understand Commissioner Jung's position, but here's what really bothers me. Under fiscal impact, the fiscal impact associated with this staff report is not determined. Because they haven't done the study. I understand, Commissioner. Thank you. So that's the and to that end, I don't think we know what the fiscal impact is on law enforcement. And I know we have, I see one retired member from law enforcement and one active member from law enforcement. There are probably others in the audience. I know we probably have at least a couple retired members from law enforcement. But I just don't know how this is going to, what's currently, forget lounges, forget imbibing elsewhere, that just doing it at home. I just don't know how it's gonna impact us. So I'm still very much a fence setter on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Herman.
My finger. Okay. I just wanted to compliment you two gentlemen. It's wisdom speaking in my book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. I have two members of the public, so let's bring them forward. Mr. Ed Alexander. And as Mr. Alexander is coming forward, I should state for the record that I toured his facility yesterday, and it is a beautiful facility. And I did take the opportunity to tour it. It's not open yet, but it's certainly going to be wonderful when it is.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Board of County Commissioners, for the record, my name is Ed Alexander, and I'm here to urge you to allow the staff the time to explore the pros and cons of cannabis consumption lounges. I would like to remind you that this is by no means an endorsement or a condemnation of the subject. It's simply allowing staff the time to provide you, Commissioner Hartung, with some of the questions that you, or the answers that you have questions to. I mean, I think you very eloquently stated that there is a ton of things in this subject matter that we don't know, and that's why we need to empower staff to come back to you folks with those types of answers so that you can make informed decisions. This potential impact for the industry, for the community, you know, as Kitty stated, we are getting feedback from the NRA, the Resort Association, saying that they are sending people $500 and $600 cleaning bills for consuming this in hotel rooms and motel rooms. Our fear as an industry is that the people voted to allow for recreational and medical use, and now we've prohibited its consumption to the point where we're charging visitors when they leave for consuming this in our hotel rooms. You know, there's been discussion on other topics this morning where you know, Commissioner Hartung, you know, you welcomed the conversation about moratoriums on development. I urge you to welcome the conversation
on the creation of regulatory language that allows Washoe County to lead this issue. You know, Commissioner Lucy, you know, you talked about the fact that, you know, the board's responsibility is to review and potentially support, you know, development. That this is development. You know, it's something that is new. It's something that can be quite scary. You know, Madam Chair, as our discussion materialized yesterday, I think you would acknowledge that some of the apprehension that was present in your own district prior to the opening of those dispensaries is no longer present. You know, you know, I live in Spanish Springs, and I got to tell you, I think the bright orange sign is offensive as well. But ultimately, this business owner has stated publicly that, hey, they're going to remove it. You know, they made a mistake. They're going to correct that mistake. But I think we owe it to the community and the constituents that voted for legal marijuana to explore this topic, and you know, a vote in any other direction, in my opinion, is short-sighted. And I know you guys are a very learned and thoughtful board, and I think it's in all of our best interest for you to give staff the time to explore.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Next, I have Mr. Douglas Studwell, Jr.
Hello. Sorry I was late that I couldn't speak at the initial public forum. The couple of questions. My name is Douglas Studwell. I live in Old Washoe Estates, which is in North Washoe Valley, which does have a dispensary grow facility going in across the street. Now, a couple of questions that I have. I was looking at the paperwork, and you know, the sample size on the survey is only 376 people out of what, 300,000, 500,000 population? And I have a serious question to ask is, where was the survey taken? Outside of a Walmart or outside of a dispensary? Or where was it? And that needs to be considered. The other thing is, you know, we're dealing with this in the unincorporated areas. I think it should also be working hand in hand because they are also in Washoe County, which is Reno and Sparks and the other cities. The other thing is, with whatever consideration goes forward on this, I think it should include the citizens groups from the areas, the CABs or whatever, to provide input. The other thing is, look at your next item on the agenda about designating Washoe County parks as smoke-free. You know, we're leaning towards smoke-free, and we're talking about hotel rooms, you know, people getting bills. Well, you know, maybe that's on the people that are doing that. They're buying marijuana, and they're going back to the hotel room and smoking. Well, they've all got conspicuous signs, whether it's tobacco or marijuana, it's no smoking. Well, if they got to pay a $500 fine, smarten up, folks. Get some edibles. Eat in your hotel room instead of smoke. Now, the next thing is, and most important of all, is law enforcement. You know, what are the standards of public intoxication or driving under the influence? In other words, what amount in your blood or breath or whatever? What is the level? How long does it last? And then, what type of viable testing methods do law enforcement have that aren't exuberant, where they got to draw blood, send it off for mass spectrometer, got to cost $10,000 a person to test or whatever. So, you know, maybe we're getting the cart before the horse here. And then the other question finally is, how do you get from the consumption lounges, which are in, again, has been brought out by the commissioners and whatever, whether it's smoking or edibles, to your residence, to your hotel room, to an RV site, campsite, a crash pad, a flop house of a friend, a park bench to go sleep it off? And, you know, that just creates some further problems. So just a lot of consideration to be taken.
Thank you, Mr. Studwell.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Seeing no other public comment, I'll bring it back to the board, and I have two commissioners, Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to argue the fact that there has been bills sent to people for a smell in the room, but I think this speaks to perhaps how unknowing my mother was. I never got busted for it. I'm just saying, I grew up in the 70s. I'm not afraid to say it. You know, this was just part of it. My mom never caught me. That was, I guess, blessed. Ozium works well, by the way. But I'm having a tough time with exactly what has been brought up with the movement from the facility to wherever they're going. They've got to get there some way, shape, or form. And I agree with Commissioner Lucy. There is no transit. I'm wondering if we need to just take a little more time, let law enforcement catch up on this, let them determine how we can determine the level of intoxication with a great deal of certainty. And I agree with Commissioner Lucy in that people smoke to get high. They smoke to get high. That's the direct reason. You smoke to get high, period. End of discussion. I don't know anybody who's said, oh, no, I only smoke, but I don't inhale. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. But it's, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I have a sick sense of humor.
As do I. But again, I'm not condemning marijuana usage. I'm not. I've been there. I've done that. It's not my deal. It's not my bag any longer. I gave it up for Lent many years ago. I'm just having a hard time with people who are intoxicated getting behind the wheel. If we had autonomous automobiles, it wouldn't bother me. It just wouldn't bother me. And you're right, Commissioner Jung, they already are. And that's what's frightening for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one last comment. And, you know, we talk about our residents who passed this and the 60% of individuals who passed this for the state of Nevada. We passed the laws for our residents. Our residents chose to use it. Most of our residents have an address, whether it's an apartment, whether it's home, what may it be. We did not pass the usage of recreational marijuana for residents outside of our state. We did not. That was never the intent. And so, and when we talk about the hotels and motels, those are all located within our municipalities. They're all located within our cores. They are not located in, not one of our dispensaries is located next to a hotel or a motel. Not one. In the unincorporated, does a lounge make sense probably for in a city or municipality? Maybe. In a downtown area where we do have nightlife and we do have that type of element, I think that's probably a more suitable location. But in the unincorporated area, Washoe Valley, Spanish Springs out on Pyramid Highway, Sun Valley, Lemon Valley. These places do not have places, and we do not have mass transit out there. We do not have the ability to get people to and from, and you do not see taxi cabs driving in front of these places to get to, not in Washoe Valley. And so, but I'm just saying it will be. The dispensary, we just know it's going to be. And so my point is, until that time, until this needs to be focused in the downtown area where tourism is focused, not out in our unincorporated area. That is my opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Vice Chair Jung.
I think every argument that was just made here by the two gentlemen to my right and left is further evidence that we need staff time to look at this and find out what are the issues. Do you need public transit? Would people like to imbibe the tourism? I don't know if you've been to the dispensaries, but I can tell you, yes, there's people with Nevada license plates, but there's a lot of California license plates. And either they're going directly home, which should be against your view as a Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority president, or they're invited to stay. But this is an issue that's happening, always has happened. We've never had the legal authority nor the will, which I thought we did have, clearly we don't, to investigate further, is this a good thing to do or not? Nobody's saying pull the trigger. Everybody is saying all of the issues and the conundrums that you are thinking of and speculating about, which could be valid or could not be valid, we don't know. We're all sitting in a basically a vacuum with rumor and innuendo and inaccuracies, no data. That's what staff's job is to do. So I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to look into considerations for regulations of marijuana in terms of what it would do for lounges in unincorporated Washoe County. If anything, it's preparing us for the legislative session, which, by the way, there's lots of bills that are going to pass, that we're already ahead of the curve on that issue too, and probably could give knowledge, insight, and perspective for Northern Nevada, which, by the way, we have no power in Northern Nevada. So we could have a Northern Nevada voice in this and how we would like our situation to look like. And you know, to say that it should be in the downtown core, I find that very offensive, because people live in different areas and do different things in those areas. And we are hearing the second ordinance reading to copy what Reno and Sparks did because they have a downtown core vis-a-vis Dottie's. We've never had a Dottie's in the unincorporated county, but we moved fast for that industry. So I find that completely lopsided and not consistent with what this board has been doing in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jung. I'm going to second that motion. Just a moment, Commissioner Hartung. I'm going to second that motion for purposes of further discussion. But I also want to go on record as saying I'm a proponent of staff study. I hate to spend taxpayer dollars to study something that ultimately I probably couldn't support. But I think Commissioner Jung makes some valid points. I do know for a fact that this issue is going to come up in the legislature, because there is a senator in Southern Nevada who is already addressing this and intends to bring it forward as a piece of legislation. And there is some value for us in the county in knowing what the type of impact this would have on us. And so I support the concept of a study. Having said that, I would like the study to show me how it can't ever happen in an Incline Village. Thank you very much. But that's, you know, that's my position. I've been very clear about how I feel about this, and I want to continue to be very clear about it. But I do think study is very beneficial in many, many ways. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would, I understand exactly what's going on. Again, I would like to see more information from law enforcement because I think that that's going to be a void piece of the data, because we just don't have enough time. And in District 4, in the unincorporated District 4, because I did look at the numbers, we voted against recreational marijuana. We voted against it. So those were my constituents speaking, and I feel the same way about having a lounge in Spanish Springs. But here's what I will tell you, and this is obvious, and this has to do with alcohol also. It's about the money. It's about the money. And that's why people who are in the dispensary business and et cetera, in the growing business, they want to see more people using, because it's about the money. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. And I want to say that I think actually the study would work hand in glove with the sheriff's office. So I really think our sheriff's deputy, who's sitting right here in the audience listening to this, would be participating in the study. So I think that we will get some of those answers that you're concerned about. So, so from that perspective, I support the concept of a study, because I do think it's beneficial. So with that, we've had public comment. Commissioners have had conversations. I would call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Please cast your vote. All those opposed say no.
Nay.
Please cast your vote and then affirm your vote on the screen. The motion fails 3-2. And so hopefully...
With that said, Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we bring this back in, let's say, January or early next year sometime, and have the discussion again when law enforcement has more information. That would be my motion, so that we table it for a time. But I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying no right now. That's my opinion.
Okay, fine, I'll second that motion. Do we have any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0. That we will revisit this issue sometime relatively soon. Okay, Mr. Manager, I would suggest that we take a break until 1 o'clock. No, I suggest we take a break until 1 o'clock. And so we will be in recess until 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock, the appointed time for us to return from our lunch break. And so we are now back in session for the afternoon. Mr. Manager, I believe we're on 12. Okay.
This item. So item 12 is an update and possible direction staff on designating Washoe County parks as smoke-free parks through changes to Chapter 95 of Washoe County Code. And let me find out where staff is.
We started on time, so we confused them. There's Miss Eva. Hi, darling. How are you? Good. Are you lonesome down there? Why don't you come up here and join me? Bobby? Are you lonesome down there?
No, I'm good. Is there another issue we can address? Can we move to another agenda item?
Yeah, you want to move to another agenda item while we're waiting for staff? Ah, there he is.
Yep, he'll be out of...
Sorry, Mr. Crump. We started on time. Shocked you, huh?
Yes. My apologies. Chair and Commissioners. For the record, Eric Crump with Washoe County's Community Services Department. I'm sorry I got hung up on the phone as well. So I'm here today to provide update and seek direction on designating Washoe County parks as smoke-free through changes to Chapter 95 of the Washoe County Code. In January of 2017, a joint meeting was held between the Washoe County Open Space and Regional Park Commission, the City of Reno Recreation and Parks Commission, and the City of Sparks Park Commission. And during this meeting, a presentation was given on smoke-free parks by the Health District and the Director of Health Policy with the University of Nevada, Reno. As a result of the presentation, a joint agency working group consisting of one park commissioner from Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County was formed to look at a smoke-free park initiative that was consistent across all the jurisdictions within the Truckee Meadows. Over this last year, that joint agency working group has been working with their respective park commissions on this initiative, and all 3 park commissions have voted in support of smoke and vape-free parks through changes to their respective ordinances. And this is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our community. There were 2 public surveys that were conducted over the course of the last year. A small one was done by the City of Sparks, and another was done by the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation. The majority of the respondents were in support of some form of smoke-free parks, and the details of both of those surveys were included in your packet. The primary enforcement, if it's supported, would be through new signage consistent across the jurisdictions. And the joint agency working group, along with staff, really felt it important that the signage have a positive message, something along the lines of enjoy your smoke-free parks rather than some prohibition. There are many cities and counties throughout our nation that have enacted similar regulations, and a list of those agencies is included in your packet. I would also add that yesterday, the Sparks City Council voted in support of designating their parks as smoke and vape free, and I believe the Reno City Council will be hearing something similar tomorrow during their meeting. Today, should you give direction to designate Washoe County parks as smoke-free, we would incorporate those changes into draft changes of Chapter 95 that we're currently working on, and we'll be developing for introduction and possible adoption. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Crump. How do we intend on enforcing this?
So with changes to Chapter 95, a lot of it's going to be through kind of social pressure. We'll have signage, but like much of the language in our Chapter 95, we currently have park staff throughout our park system that ask for compliance. Included in our changes to Chapter 95 would be potentially citation authority. That would give our park rangers the ability, much like animal services, either civil or potentially a misdemeanor. That would be kind of the last tool in our toolbox. It's not a prevalent problem throughout our park, so I don't think there's going to be a huge issue in terms of enforcement, but it would provide smoke-free areas within our parks.
So, okay, smoke-free areas, not the entire park? I mean, are you going to have designated areas that smokers could go to in the park? Was that the suggestion? Did I miss that?
So our park commission actually was in support of smoke-free areas. Staff actually feels that having designated areas associated with our buildings. So smoke-free parks in our neighborhood parks where there's no buildings make a lot of sense. We have a lot of buildings that are community centers that hold weddings, social functions. We also have staff working there, and we would like to designate areas much like we do at this facility and many of our other county facilities. We would designate areas within our associated with those buildings, but the vast remainder of all the parks would be smoke-free.
So I'll articulate a fear that I have. My fear is that we go through the process and we say, yeah, parks are smoke-free. And by the way, I'm a non-smoker, so this is of no consequence to me.
Sure.
Or actually anyone in my family. Nobody smokes. Used to many years ago, my folks and et cetera, when it was vogue in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but they've long since given it up.
Sure.
But that said, if we do this, then somebody says to somebody who's walking their dog in the park, let's just say Rancho San Rafael, they're walking their dog and they're literally in the middle of this open area, that someone's walking, smoking a cigarette or whatever, vaping or et cetera. And because we've created this ordinance, then certain citizens may feel empowered to enforce the ordinance themselves. And I just have a little concern with how we would enforce it. It's very, very difficult to enforce. It's no different than trying to enforce littering. Littering has been illegal for years, and I still watch people roll their window down and pitch things out. I mean, you know, and you see the mounds of trash that NDOT and other agencies have to pick up, and it's, you know, people just ignore it. And there's huge signs on the highway that say $500 fine or whatever it happens to be for littering. So it's not that I'm opposed to this. I'm just concerned with how do we enforce it? How do we go about the enforcement process? And I just think that there could be some challenges, especially when you're dealing with large parks.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Mr. Crump, I hope no one misses the humor that this item comes directly after a proposal to legalize marijuana facilities to smoke in. I mean, this is a bit humorous to me. As you may or may not know, my probably only claim to fame, aside from the fact that I have wonderful children, is that I was the non-smoking lobbyist in Nevada back in the 80s. And I'm the reason that we even started having non-smoking laws in Nevada, because when I started this, you literally could smoke in a hospital room where oxygen was pumping, or in a classroom at school. So, as you can imagine, I am totally non-smoking in every way. But the humor to me is, as Commissioner Hartung said, I don't have any idea how we're going to enforce this. I'm completely fine with it. If that's what we all want to do, I think it's a great idea. I'm very pro-regional issues, and so if the city of Sparks and the city of Reno think it's an excellent idea, let's do it. I just don't see how it's going to be enforced.
Yeah. If I may, Chair, and hopefully answer Commissioner Hartung's questions as well. You know, we certainly have the same concerns. Our park staff are few, based on, you know, the many acres we have to manage. So we have lots of ordinances or laws on the book, whether it's disposing of trash illegally, whether it's off-leash dogs not picking up after your animals, all those types of things. And we can only be where we can be and see what we can do. And this will be no different than those. And we kind of have to ask ourselves, is the fact that enforcement will be a challenge a good enough reason not to do something? And I think, you know, the fact that we do have leash laws, the fact that we do have littering laws are kind of proof to this kind of goes along with those. Again, it's not a prevalent problem. Most people, I would say the vast majority of people who our park staff encounter who are doing something, a lot of times it's because they don't know any better. And when we talk to them, we work through that. And so it's very seldom that we have any altercations. The leash thing, we obviously have that throughout our park
Serious
system.
problem.
Yes.
I can attest to that with a broken ankle.
Exactly. So, you know, we have people in our parks that take it upon themselves to talk to other animal owners and say, hey, your dog really needs to be on a leash. You know, I don't feel comfortable, or my dog feels threatened, and, you know, so we have that, and I don't know any way around it. So it's not something new to us, and we're used to dealing with it.
Okay. Certainly. Commissioner Lucy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I have to agree with Mr. Crump. I think that even though that just because we can't enforce it doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at this from a more global level. I think it's a social conscience, consciousness that when we go out, when individuals know that it's a Sparks Free, when our residents are participating, one of the jewel parks of my district is Bowers Mansion. There's a public pool down there. There's, you know, barbecue areas. There's a lot of places for individuals to recreate. And I think that if we make a stance from Washoe County and make a position that we support smoke-free parks and smoke-free areas, I think it's not only our job to police, but it's the job of the citizens that also recreate there. And I think they'll take it upon themselves, just as individuals who, you know, make statements is that with dogs that are, you know, recreating and we clean up, we provide bags. It's like, hey man, we're all trying to enjoy this. Please pick up after yourself. You know, and I think it's our job as humans, if we just allow things just because we make rules, you know, don't have the capacity. I think it's still the social conscience of those individuals that live within the area that really want to maintain these clean and pristine, beautiful areas. And I think it's something that we, as commissioners and as Northern Nevada residents, are really proud of our open spaces. We're proud of our park system, and I think this is the right thing to do. You know, and I don't see why we wouldn't move forward just because, you know, and it's always been kind of counterintuitive to me. If you're going to go to a park, why take a pack of cigarettes? I mean, it's like when I go to the ski resort and I go skiing and I see people light up at down on the. It's like you just got done skiing and doing some sort of a physical activity, and now you're going to light up a cigarette. It's like having a beer while you're sitting at the gym. It doesn't make any sense to me, but.
Or a milkshake.
I know. My point is, it's just counterintuitive. So, as long as we maintain parks for the beauty and recreation of what we try to do and try to promote physical activity and try to promote a healthy community, I think this falls in line with our vision, it falls in line with our mission and the steps that we need to do. And I think we need to rely on the individuals that we're providing these spaces for to help us police this. So that would be my only comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung, you had a second.
I do, and look, my comments were not meant to dissuade or to say that we shouldn't do this. I completely agree. Again, I have no issue whatsoever. I see and find nothing more repellent than walking through a park, the Arboretum, and you see these beautiful planters with cigarette butts in them, and it's just it's just very bothersome for me. Yeah. And again, I'm not a smoker, so I can't wrap my arms around it. I too find the humor and the irony in the previous agenda item. When I was reading it, I thought, wow, my goodness. Okay, so we're going to create places for people to smoke marijuana, but we're going to make sure that people don't smoke in our parks. And so we're asking people not to smoke tobacco, but we're saying it's okay to smoke marijuana. And while I recognize the level of nicotines and et cetera and the health issues, and I don't want to get off topic, Mr. Liparelli, like beer in a gym, I didn't know that was a problem. I thought that's why they all had open bars. But I am not opposed to this. I mean, I'll be very open. I see no issue with creating smoke-free zones. I would love to convince society that smoking is a detriment to your health and to the people around you, and people who smoke around their children,
regardless of what you're smoking.
Oh my goodness! And I endured that as a small child. Both of my parents smoked, and I blessedly, I don't think there's been any health issues, but it's just what everybody did in the 60s and in the 50s. It's just what everybody did. But I think where there's a new awakening, and I'm supportive of this. I have no problem. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Herman?
I think it's the responsible thing to do, and I'm with you.
Manager Slaughter?
Madam Chair, just for the record, I've received, and I believe I've passed them on to all of you and to the clerk. If I haven't, I will make sure I do that. I've received letters of support from the following organizations: the American Heart Association, the Nevada Tobacco Prevention Coalition, the Nevada Public Health Association, Truckee Meadows Park Foundation, and Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful.
Okay, good. Thanks. Commissioner Lucy?
Madam Chair, I just want to point out one thing for the public record as well. We're not just talking about cigarettes. We're talking about vaping as well, which has become a new popular, and very easily now most people can procure marijuana based for their vape pens or whatever and so we are talking about individuals vaping marijuana in public parks. We're talking
Any
about
type of smoke.
And it's not just cigarettes. We're talking about anything that could be considered hazardous to those around them. And so I really am supportive, not just of the cigarettes and but I mean the vaping as well. So
yeah, good.
I'll make a motion.
I have some public comment, so let me get the public comment in, and then you can make a motion. Okay. So on the public agenda, I have Mr. Michael Hackett. I knew Michael was here on this issue.
Okay.
I think you're off now. Is the light on?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Hackett and members of the Commission, Michael Hackett. I'm here today in my capacities as the president of the Nevada Tobacco Prevention Coalition and as a consultant for the Nevada Public Health Association. As Manager Slaughter indicated, both of those organizations have submitted letters in support of this issue that's for your consideration today, so I'm not going to go about reading those letters. But I did want to highlight just a couple of pieces from them. First and foremost, expanding smoke-free and vape-free areas throughout the state are high priority issues for both organizations. Prohibiting smoking and vaping in public places are also effective tools for fulfilling the respective missions of each organization, particularly tobacco use and e-cigarette use and other vapor products use in general right now. In the broader context, however, our scope of influence, our scope of areas that we look at on behalf of both organizations, it's not just limited to certain pieces here and there. In the broader context, both organizations support efforts that focus on healthy communities and sustainable living, understanding the role that prohibiting tobacco use and e-cigarette use can play in those efforts. The proposal before you today are important steps in that direction. The other information we provide in the letters basically have to do with some background about our respective organizations, who our members are, some data indicating to what the current smoking rates are in the state, and what the economic impact is on the toll that Nevada takes on our state. Lastly, in closing, I just want to thank the Commission for your consideration of this issue, and if there are any other ways that we can play a part in moving this forward, we're very happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Next on the agenda is Ms. Kelly Goatley Seals. Please, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hello, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Thank you. Again, my name is Kelly Goatley Seals for the record. I'm speaking on behalf of the public health community. I am here with the Washoe County Health District. I have colleagues in the audience as well from the Nevada Cancer Coalition. And on behalf of public health, we do strongly support this ordinance. I appreciate the discussion you had here today. I'm not going to belabor the fact, but there's three main reasons why the health community sees this as important. It eliminates the exposure to secondhand smoke, which we know is hazardous to health. It sends a message to youth that we want to protect them from these hazards and encourages them not to smoke. It creates a social norm of not smoking, and it encourages people that do smoke to quit smoking and offers them a supportive environment to have a smoke-free lifestyle. Our data shows that 85% of Washoe County citizens are non-smokers, and among adults, 92% do not vape. So this is a issue that is for the majority of our citizens here in Washoe County. So again, on behalf of the public health community, thank you for the consideration and the discussion, and as well, we're happy to provide and continue to provide technical assistance as you move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goatley Seals. I appreciate it. Next on the list is Ms. Jeanette Orton. Good morning, or afternoon.
Good afternoon. Jeanette Orton, for the record. I'm with Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, the organization that did the survey back in November. We had 963 legitimate responses to that survey, and 76% of those were in support of either a full ban or a partial ban on smoking in parks. And just to give you an idea of the people that were surveyed, it's park goers. We support Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County Parks, so it's 963 of your park goers, and something like, I think it was 87% of them don't smoke, and 98% of them don't vape, just to reiterate on what Kelly said. So and I guess in conclusion, I would just like to state that Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, myself included, is in support of smoke-free parks.
Thank you, Ms. Orton. Appreciate it. Seeing no more public comment, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Commissioner Hartung.
Well, I'll make a motion for the purposes, and I do just, I want to have a small amount of discussion yet with staff, but I would make a motion to approve.
Okay. I have a motion and a second.
Under discussion, Madam Chair. So here's my only concern, Mr. Crump. And I'm sure that there's more than one facility. Actually, I can think of two right off the top of my head that we would rent out for events like weddings and et cetera. So I'll use Rancho San Rafael as the example. And I think Bartley Ranch, we rent that area out for public events, or private events rather. So how would we handle that? Because I know during weddings, people would often go outside and the fellows would drink scotch or whiskey and have a cigar and, sort of a congratulatory kind of an affair. How are we going to deal with those particular places? Are we just going to say, period, no smoking at those facilities, or how do we balance that? And because it is, and I respect everything that's being said here. Again, I'm not a smoker, so it's of no consequence to me personally or my family. This is not going to affect us either way as far as our personal habits.
Sure. Commissioner Hartung, through the chair. So, we've considered that. It's staff's opinion that we would designate smoking areas, and we'd be strategic in those, and they'd be associated with our buildings, knowing that people utilize our park buildings. They're not necessarily park goers, if you will. They're not there to recreate. They're maybe there for a social event, a wedding. We also have staff at some of these buildings. And to send them in their car and drive them out of the park to smoke, some may deem unreasonable. I don't know any of our staff that smoke, but it could happen. So we would be strategic in determining those smoking areas, much like we have here with signage. Working with those groups is fairly easy to, we're in constant communication with them from the time they rent it throughout the event. So that should be fairly easy to handle.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Please cast your vote and then affirm your vote on the screen. Motion carries 4-0 with Vice Chair Jung not here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, if I could suggest maybe we turn to the public hearing, starting with item 15 next.
I'm sorry, item 15?
Item 15.
Okay.
So this is a public hearing. This is item 15, second reading, adoption of an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 25, Chapter 53, and Chapter 110.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
This is ordinance number 1616, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 25, Business License Ordinance, Chapter 53, Miscellaneous Crimes, and Chapter 110, Development Code, to provide for limited exemption of certain acts from criminal prosecution and for licensing and land use authorization required to operate marijuana establishments, including cultivation facilities, distributors, product manufacturing facilities, testing facilities, and retail marijuana stores / medical dispensaries, which are licensed by the state of Nevada under NRS Chapter 453A and or NRS Chapter 453D to allow for all marijuana establishments in general commercial and industrial regulatory zones, to allow for retail marijuana stores / medical dispensaries in neighborhood commercial and tourist commercial regulatory zones as well, and to address other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. Bill number 1802.
Thank you. Commissioners, does anybody need a presentation from staff? Commissioner Lucy?
Madam Clerk, not a presentation from staff. Madam Clerk, you said bill number 1802 or ordinance number?
It was introduced as bill number 1802. This is a second reading.
What's
this
the
is
ordinance?
Ordinance number 1616.
Thank you. That was all I needed. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a...
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Hartung?
Yes, while I know that this is maybe a little late, I hate the fact that we can put these things in neighborhood commercial. There's neighborhood commercial all over the place, and we were very, Sparks was very intent on keeping it in their industrial areas. Neighborhood commercial is, You find that throughout Spanish Springs. You find it throughout, South Valleys. You find neighborhood commercial all over the place. And I'm not convinced, and while I understand tourist commercial, which is gaming, I get that, and I get general commercial and industrial regulation zones, but neighborhood commercial, I don't know. I'm having a hard time with that because it is so prevalent. It is a very common land use designation.
It is.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Lucy.
Mr. Webb, can I have you ask a question of you, please? Mr. Webb, we currently are allotted in Washoe County by the state of Nevada 20 dispensaries within our region, correct?
For the record, Bob Webb of the Community Services Department, through the chair to Commissioner Roxy, 453D did allow a maximum of 20 retail source class dispensaries for the entirety of Washoe County.
Okay, and can you, for the record, can you break down those allotments between Sparks, Reno, and the unincorporated county, please?
Again, through the chair to Commissioner Losi, currently there's only 13 that have been allocated. Those are the current dispensary allocations that have already been done in the initial surge of 10 that came out 2.5 years ago, and then the ones that came out in the most recent. So those allocations are, and I'm going to get my numbers straight here, 6 in the unincorporated county, 4 in the city of Reno, 3 in the city of Sparks. The remaining 7 have not been allocated yet by the state. Our conversations with the state seem to indicate that those would go to the more populous areas of the county, specifically Reno or Sparks, and perhaps, again, conversation with the Department of Taxation is that the majority of them would go to the city of Reno.
Okay, great. And Madam Chair, I agree with Commissioner Hartine. I mean, I do have some challenges with the neighborhood commercial. Maybe something to be revisited down the road.
Can we just omit it, Mr. Leporelli?
It's too late, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's too big of a change, isn't it, Mr. Leporelli? Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
yes, that would be a significant change to the ordinance requiring a do-over.
But Mr. Leporelli, we could go ahead and pass this and then bring it back at a later meeting and have that removed from it?
That's right, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, at this time, I feel there's a lot of substantive changes in here that are a benefit to the code, minus the one issue that Commissioner Hartung brings forward, which I tend to agree on. I would like to, if it's okay with you, I would like to make a motion at this time to.
Okay. Could you hold on to
Yes,
that because I do
absolutely.
have public comment?
Sure.
Mr. Will Adler, so we're moving to public comment right now.
Will Adler, representing the Sierra Cannabis Coalition, for the record. I would like to briefly state that Washoe County has actually done a very good job with vetting their ordinances. You took quite a bit of time to go through every issue. You met with the industry, you met with the public. We did work out almost every single issue as far as I understand. We separated out social clubs for a separate agenda item because we realized they were not part of this. And, in this process, you get the 3% fee, and we've designated different districts. But to Commissioner Hartung's point just recently, there are further restrictions than just what areas you're allowed to put these in. We can't be near a school. We can't be near a residence. There's several layers upon that, to the point where in Washoe County, there's actually so few designatable properties that when we tried to decluster them out of the Tahoe area, we found that there was only about 10 buildings available in the whole of Washoe County that you could pick from to move those ones out of the incline area where they were clustered. That's why we ended up with 2 in Sun Valley, 1 in Spanish Springs, and 1 down in southern Washoe County, because there was already such a restriction out there with the available regulations you already have and combined with the state regulations that you would not see these move anywhere else, I would say. In addition, you're restricting it already to have no new dispensaries. So where they are currently, you'd expect to continue to see them. Nobody is looking to move, to my knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adler. Okay, Commissioner Lucy, that's the end of public comment, so we'll close it and bring it back to the board. Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to introduce ordinance number 1616 at this time, with attachment the board's 2017 marijuana policy and the a proposed ordinance for WC chapters 25, 53, and 110.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I think the commissioner meant to say adopt, not introduce.
Oh, sorry. Thank you
Yes.
very much. I would move to, I was reading right off my staff report where it says introduce, and I'm not doing a very good job there. Move to adopt the ordinance number 1616 as proposed.
For purposes of finishing this off, I will second this.
Okay.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Madam Chair, and while I recognize what's being said, I still have a problem without concrete knowledge that will bring back neighborhood commercial and get that removed. I'm still uncomfortable with that. I have no problem with the other areas, but neighborhood commercial is a very, very broad land use piece in Washoe County. It's, and there are many rural parcels in both your district, Commissioner Lucy's district, in my district, and in Commissioner Herman's district that are currently zoned rural that are prime candidates for neighborhood commercial. And so that's where I'm having a bit of an angst. I'm just, it needs to be just a little tied down. And again, I completely respect exactly what's going on here, but I saw what happened, and I want to thank Commissioner Lucy. I want to thank Mr. Adler. I want to thank several others for taking care of this. But you see some of these dispensaries going rogue occasionally, and then we have to become the police officers to make them, sort of rein them in so that they don't have these wild, garish looks. And while our community is not Arrow Creek, our community is wonderful. It's beautiful. We love our community in Spanish Springs. I think the city of Sparks was very wise when they decided, look, you're only going to put it in our industrial area. You're not going to have it in our downtown cores. You're not going to have it over at the Legends. You're not going to put it in our neighborhood commercial areas. They were very specific to that. And so I'm having a little bit of a tough time with that. I just think I have a responsibility to point out how broad land use can be and how it is easy to change. And we don't know all of those numbers. While I recognize what Mr. Adler, the scenario that they were up against, they did not want to build. The RISE facility did not want to build. And so consequently, they were looking for a structure that they could either rent or that was standalone. And that greatly narrowed their ability to find something. So it's, again, neighborhood commercial is very, very broad, and I've probably got 10 or 15 parcels currently in my district.
I have a bunch in mind, too.
I'm positive you do. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Mr. Luparelli, let me ask you a question. Is it possible for us to ask for this to come back at the last meeting of this month, removing this language for neighborhood commercial?
Madam Chair, the state law on county ordinances is NRS 244-100, and it contemplates introducing an ordinance and then taking a period of time after which it's been published and notice has been given for people to be able to examine it. And then the hearing on the adoption gives folks an opportunity to come in and participate in the process. So if you're going to make a substantial change to the ordinance, like removing an entire zoning category where it's allowed, I think you're going to have to start over from first reading and go through 2 meetings more to adopt such an ordinance. So in other words, you won't be able to get it done by the end of the month.
Even if we voted to support this ordinance as it's currently written, if we passed it as it's currently written and then brought it back, just bring the whole issue back and change it at the last meeting of this month and just take that language out of the ordinance.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. So if you adopt this ordinance today as written, there's a publication period and then it will take effect. It's usually 10 days or so. Then you start over with a new ordinance on first reading and then another reading, a second reading, to take neighborhood business out of the code. So you wouldn't be able to get everything done by the end of the month.
But we could do it, it has to go back to the Planning Commission, our favorite place for things to go. How fast can you get that stuff done we were talking about earlier? By the end of this month? 3 days?
Maybe I can assist with this. So, for the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. One of the processes we have set up with the current marijuana code compliant or code team is actually to scrub all the rest of the Washoe County Code chapters to see what other items need to be dealt with, as strictly dealing with recreational marijuana being passed by the voters of the state of Nevada. So maybe I can offer up that, I've taken notes that this is an item that wants to be readdressed by this board. I know it's not as quickly potentially as possible for you. However, understanding that we do have 6 locations currently in the process, that is our current only allocation. Not sure there's a whole lot of downside in letting staff go through the process and really vet this and understand the ramifications. As you'll recall, when we were doing medical marijuana and trying to treat this as a business, kind of some of those pitfalls that we were getting through as far as available land. I think we had some public comment on that. So I'd like to offer that we as staff understand your concern for neighborhood commercial being an item, and I'd like to be able to wrap that into all the rest of the work that we're continuing to do with our Washoe County Code, if that's acceptable to the board.
Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One other question I had, and I, like I said, I appreciate Commissioner Hartung's concern, and I think it's smart, but I do, 6 of our dispensaries, out of the 6 of our dispensaries, some of those are currently located in neighborhood commercial. So I think there would have to be some extensive discussion in regards to not just yanking it out, but how we let the current neighborhood commercial continue to operate. Those that are operating currently in neighborhood, would those be grandfathered in, and would this predicate on those going forward? Any new dispensaries that are coming into the area? I would want to get some more details, because I think just yanking neighborhood commercial out, that would challenge, because I know, for example, the one in South Arena and South Washoe Valley is a neighborhood commercial currently.
So is the one in Incline.
And some of the one is an incline. So I'd like some clarification in regards to, if we remove that neighborhood commercial, would that impact those operations, and how would that go about? And that's just a question I have. So like I said, I'm for bringing it back, for having a reworking of this and making sure that all of Commissioner Hartung's concerns are addressed. I want to make sure that it doesn't impact the ones that we've already allowed to operate and open and operate the business. So.
Yeah, valid point. I agree with you. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought the one in South Washoe Valley, you're referring to the one that's on Old 395? I thought that was a piece of commercial property originally. Not that's neighborhood commercial. It's GC. Oh. It is GC, not NC. Right, it is GC, and that's what memory had served me. But
not mine.
Not yours. An incline that's correct. So again, my concern is I really, neighborhood commercial is such a broad land use, and we went to that a number of years ago because there were many things that didn't fit commercial and industrial that were more appropriate to put in a neighborhood commercial designation, and it's not as an intense use. And so I will reluctantly support, because I know how much time staff has put into this, and I don't want to put everybody back through the ringer. But I would like to have neighborhood commercial brought back with some, maybe there's some caveats that we put on neighborhood commercial. Maybe there's some additional restraints and constraints that we put on neighborhood commercial to say, look, we really need to look at this and see, not just the fact, because all neighborhood commercial is surrounded by neighborhoods. So if there's any, you've already got residential, buy it by the fact that it's neighborhood commercial, because that's what it's for. It's for being in neighborhoods and near residential. That's how you get that little mom and pop, 7-Eleven or drugstore or whatever it happens to be. So
yes. Good point.
And Commissioner Hartung, Madam Chair, if I may, there is a number of the locations that were initially proposed on Mount Rose Highway. Yes. Were all neighborhood commercial locations. Those on Arrow Creek Parkway, those up on Mount Rose Highway, all those were neighborhood commercial.
All of them, yeah.
Prior to the relocation to the Washoe Valley area. So I agree. I think that's been a big point of contention in this discussion all along. I would like to see it come back for further discussion, but to delay all the other work that we've done up to this point in regards to, I think would be, we would be working against ourselves in challenging the time, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. I think, Mr. Liparelli, did you have something?
Madam Chair, just briefly, generally speaking, if you change your zoning scheme to make something impermissible that used to be permissible, you create the prior non-conforming use. Some folks know it as the grandfathering. So generally speaking, unless you do something extremely precise, if the use was legal when it was established, it would remain legal as long as it was continuously used. And then if it's abandoned, then the right to that use goes away. So if you amended your code down the road to remove neighborhood business, those businesses that are currently located there could presumably stay. Otherwise, you create the problem of downzoning, which can lead to claims for takings and all sorts of things. So it can be done to leave the existing businesses as is, but prohibit future ones from being located in neighborhood business.
And
Commissioner Hartung.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, and that was completely my intent, was to grandfather if there were any existing businesses, but and I'm not and perhaps there's a way, staff, that we can look at this whereby we can put some controls and look at it very carefully to see to gauge its appropriateness, because there are just some places that are just not going to work, even though they're currently zoned neighborhood commercial. And so I will take the board at its word that we will revisit this and just have this conversation in a deeper fashion. And again, I will support based on that trust.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. I want to just, one thing, Commissioner Lewis, I just want to say one thing. There's no question that the last thing we want to see is one of these on Mount Rose Highway, or one of the new ones on Mount Rose Highway, one of the facilities on Mount Rose Highway, or anything in Incline Village. It's just too small of a village to add another facility. And Mount Rose Highway is just too dangerous a highway already to add a facility like this. So I agree with Commissioner Hartung, and I would ask staff to, as you do your cleanup, you really look at that carefully and see how you can take care of that for our concerns. Commissioner Lucy?
Madam Chair, while we're on the topic really quick, and I'll be as quickly as possible. One thing I would look to DA Liparelli's point of the grandfathering. I understand that those businesses would be grandfathered in, but even if the changing of hand, even the sale of license, can we discuss if the license changed hand, or would that remain with the property? Because as Spanish Springs grows, as Sun Valley grows, we may deem that neighborhood commercial, where some of these locations are no longer suitable for this type of business, and we'd like to see them move. If that said owner were to sell that license, would the license stay, as Mr. Liparelli said, grandfathered in because of its conformance, or would this board say, we don't feel that this really, even though it's and you've sold the business, you've no longer the new ownership, can we mandate that those individuals move out of that neighborhood commercial and move to a new location that's more that has more is more beneficial for that type of business based upon the decision of this board?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hartung.
And I would completely agree with Commissioner Lucy, and I would draw the board's attention to the discussions that the city of Reno is having right now with adult entertainment.
Good point.
The same, it's the identical, it's a parallel. They're not the same, but it's a parallel where they're
both adult entertainment.
But they've decided that it's not appropriate in these certain areas anymore, and they'd like to move it out. And so I think Commissioner Lucy is spot on. He's onto something, and I completely respect it. And again, I will be supportive as long as let's just revisit it and let's just put some controls on it. That's all. Let's just make it very prescriptive.
Okay, we've done public comment, and we have no more commissioner comments, so let's call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please cast your vote and then affirm your vote on the screen. Motion carries 3-1, with Commissioner Herman voting no and Commissioner Jung not here. Okay, Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, then we would go to item 16, which is public hearing also. This is adoption of an updated master plan license fee schedule, which includes a new quarterly marijuana establishment license fee as authorized pursuant to AB 422, Section 65.6 of the 2017 session, and Washoe County Code Section 25.728, and a new marijuana establishment relocation application fee. And if approved, authorize the chair to sign a resolution adopting the master business license fee schedule with an effective date of April 20th, 2018. The proposed quarterly marijuana establishment license fee will be 3% of a marijuana establishment's reported quarterly gross revenue, and the proposed marijuana establishment relocation application fee will be $500.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any, do you have a need for a report or just have some comments?
I have some comments and some questions.
Commissioner Hartung?
And again, just based on what we were just talking about appropriateness of placement, I don't think $500 is enough. I mean, that just barely begins to scratch the surface for staff time. I mean, I don't even want to think about how much time Ms. Tone, Mr. Webb, Ms. Searcy, Mr. Solero, Mr. Manager, forget the commissioners, the amount of time that we've put in. I mean, we've put in terms of staff time, a huge amount of time, you know, trying to figure this out. And all that said, and I'm not suggesting that it's bad, but I'm just not convinced that $500, you know, when someone wants to do a relocation application fee, I think it should be something more along the lines, the base fee should be $500, and then we go, you know, and try to put some caveats in there, because, I mean, you know, we could spend, you know, hundreds of hours of staff time just trying to figure things out. And what I mean by that is, look at all the preparation that staff has done just in terms of the public meetings that they've held and how prepared they are. And Commissioner used the term adroit, great word. Adept, in other words, that you know, our staff, I'll put our staff against anybody. They're very, very smart and very well read, and they understand the situation perfectly, but they put in that didn't just come easily. They put in a lot of time. And I think that's kind of that's a gimme price to relocate.
So is that something you want to see the staff revisit also?
Absolutely. I just think I have no problem with the rest of it, but I just don't think it's enough for staff to visit it and do the work. You know, we're constantly talking about cost recovery, and you know, our staff puts in a ton of time on all manner of things, and $500 just doesn't go very far when it comes to staff time.
Mr. Solero.
Good afternoon. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. Commissioner, this is one of those items that we are currently going through as a holistic review of all of our fees and charges for development services. So I'd like to add this in and really understand what the staff time cost is. You should remember also that this is just for the application fee. We also have a mechanism to capture the cost for inspection and those on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
So this is really that application fee. So I'd like to be able to, with your permission, go ahead and put this into that process. That we've got an outside consultant looking at our fees. I think some of you have been, tried to get your feedback on building and our building fees, but we're also doing planning and engineering as well. So this is one that I can certainly throw in there to make sure that we're recouping all of our staff time associated with this application.
Right, and my concern is, if you have to hold one public meeting, Mr. Solero, and you have to be there, Mr. Webb has to be there, Ms. Tone has to be there, and of course, let's not forget the sheriff. The sheriff will come to, you know, sort of just be there as a visual presence. You know, all of those things cost a great deal of money, and I can tell you the meetings that I've been to, the community meetings that I've been to, if we only spent $500 in staff time just on that one meeting, I would be floored. I'd be floored.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Lucy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I agree with Commissioner Hartung. You know, I think cost recovery is essential to what we're trying to accomplish here at the county, and especially with issues, especially based upon the legislative session and the bills that were passed and the mandates, you know, of the public meetings and the different things like this. But I do want to commend staff for their time to really evaluate that fee schedule and the work that they put into it. And I think if we can, address the application fee today, but really bring back, subsequent fees that are going to be impacted based upon the impact of these public meetings, the needs and necessities as we move forward in the process. I think that's a responsible way of doing it, and just so we can get at least some fee schedule on the board immediately, so that we have something in case. And then as this board continues to work forward and really based upon the data provided by staff through that third-party evaluation, really evaluate what that staff time and what we're going to need to do to truly cover those costs.
Okay, I see no more commissioner comments, and I have no public comments signed in, so I'm looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, I would
Commissioner
move.
Lucy.
Madam Chair, I would move to adopt. Let's see here. I apologize. I'm making a motion and I'm not even prepared. Move to adopt the updated master business license fee schedule as drafted within the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Please, opposed? Please cast your vote on the screen. And then affirm your vote up above. Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Jung absent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Mr. Manager.
Madam Chair, may I suggest we go to item 18 next?
18?
So this is a public hearing item. This is item 18, public hearing. This is the second reading, possible action to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Washoe County Code, intoxicating liquor and gaming licenses and regulations.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
This will be ordinance number 1617, an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Washoe County Code, intoxicating liquor and gaming licenses and regulations, Section 30.010, definitions, to amend definitions for taverns, tavern restaurants, and associated gaming devices, and to add a definition for grandfathered tavern and grandfathered tavern restaurant, Section 30.355, operation of a tavern or tavern restaurant with restricted or limited gaming, to add a requirement for the type and number of gaming devices allowed for a tavern or tavern restaurant with restricted or limited gaming, Section 30.360, license application, to add a requirement for submittal of a diagram and written declaration with an application for license or renewal of a restricted limited gaming license, Section 30.400, renewal notice of due date, substantial changes, to add a provision for noncompliance with Section 30.355 and Section 30.419, suspension and revocation of gaming licenses, to include non-renewal of a license for good cause, and to allow enforcement of gaming license in association with misrepresentation on gaming license applications and other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto. It was Bill number 1803.
Thank you. Commissioners, does anybody want a presentation? Commissioner Herman? Commissioner Herman? Yes, you want a presentation? Okay. Staff? I don't know who's on board.
Good afternoon again. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. This item began as a way to assist staff in tightening up our regulations so that when and if we get a complaint related to limited gaming establishments within Washoe County, state law is very specific that talks about limited gaming establishments being able to have 15 slot machines as not the primary part of their business. So think of a grocery store, or actually, that's a bad example. Think of a sports bar where their main business is the sports bar and restaurant. They can have gaming provisions up to 15 slot machines. However, if those slot machines are the primary business, they can only have 7 slot machines, or they have to get an unlimited gaming license within the state. And so there was some concern from the community that we were not able to adequately enforce some of the provisions that we've got within our code, specifically when we're talking about the limited nature of this gaming product within unincorporated Washoe County. So we worked with gaming proponents to create very similar to what City of Reno and City of Sparks have created as far as parameters within their code to deal strictly with limited gaming establishments within the city limits. So we've adopted those same types of regulations within unincorporated Washoe County. The difference being in the cities, they call them a bar. In the county, we call them taverns. And so it's a way for our code enforcement officers to be able to understand when they walk into an establishment. There's also a requirement for these machines to be put in a bar. And so, it's very apparent when we walk into an establishment that, this is ancillary use to the main use of the facility. Therefore, giving our code compliance officers a better approach to enforcing current codes. So if there are any other
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Solero. Does that answer your question? Commissioner Herman? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Solero. Commissioner Hartung.
So, Mr. Solero, yeah, don't go away. I understand why we're doing this, and in fact, I happen to agree that they found a loophole in terms of tavern versus what I would consider to be a gaming or a slot parlor, because that's their primary business. It's not being a tavern, it's not being a grill, it's a gaming parlor, it's a slot parlor. Why didn't we address this in our land use code and call it out specifically for what it is, which is a gaming or a slot parlor, which would achieve the same thing, but it would be a little bit easier. My concern is enforcement. I just don't know how we're going to enforce this, and I think we could have achieved the same thing by creating a business type allowed in a specific land use and deal with it from that perspective, because they're truly not a tavern. It's not their primary business.
For the commissioner, through the chair, this process had a lot of machinations. We went back and forth. We were actually going to bring forward something in both Chapter 110, land use, and Chapter 30, because this is also contained within Chapter 30. At the request of the industry, their thought was, since this is taken care of in business license locations, City of Sparks, City of Reno regionally, that it would be easier for everybody to kind of be on the same page and bring this forward solely within the business license side of the world, instead of trying to muddy how we deal with land use separate from business license. So we made the choice to move this forward consistent to the way the other jurisdictions in the area have done this, trying to be, again, consistent. A lot of the businesses that come in, again, we hear, I don't care if I'm in the City of Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County, this is the business that I do. Why are things different in each jurisdiction? And so this was an attempt to keep it consistent through the jurisdictions.
And did you have something else?
But that's okay.
Go ahead.
I'll follow.
No, that's okay.
I'm
Go ahead.
happy. I'm happy to acquiesce, Madam Chair. But so I understand that, but I still have an issue with enforcement. So when they go out and they get their business license and let's just say their bar height is 2 inches or 6 inches too low. And when we checked it initially, it was the correct height, and then they changed it. I mean, this is really a gaming issue. This is something that the state of Nevada should be dealing with, and I'm a little uncomfortable with going that direction. But we'll assume that they did everything. They roughed it all in. The guy checked it, and just to get a C of O is of no consequence. I mean, it's fairly simple. Are we going to have to go out now and check what they're doing when they have a business license? Because I have a business license in Washoe County. They don't come out to my home and check to make sure that my computer is a certain height or any of those kinds of things. So again, how do we enforce that? And that's why under land use, it would be much easier, in my opinion, to deal with it.
for the commissioner through the chair, you know, the height of the bar and those sorts of things, those are also Americans with Disabilities Act compliance issues as well that go through the process for permitting when the building is originally brought in for a building permit. I think the concern regarding enforcement of this, remember gaming licenses are dealt with on a quarterly basis, and so we send out bills to the operators on a quarterly basis. Part of this is that much like they've got to provide a document to the state that shows what their business layout looks like, we're also now requiring that as well. So we've got the file, we've got the information that shows what the business really is to allow when we get that complaint that comes in. Again, we're enforcement via complaint-driven process. So it's not like we go out and actually every single time, every quarter, we go out and verify all of these other sorts of things. There is a little bit of an honor system here when you bring in that affidavit for your business license that you are complying with Washoe County Code. Now, if there is a complaint, certainly we will go out and we will review those to make sure that they meet the requirements of the code. Just like if it was land use, code compliance officers, they do the same work under the business license code as well.
Okay. Yeah, again, I would have been, I think we need to just call the business out for what it is, because it's not a tavern. They're not a tavern. They're just, plain, pure and simple. And we used to have this same issue in studios. We had a photography studio. You could be a studio, but if you had a darkroom associated with it, it triggered a completely different type of review. Mm-hmm. and a completely different department, and so it's I see the parallels there. I do think that gaming or slot parlors that's a specific business type. I mean, there's no question of that, and these guys have we'll have another item on the agenda where a fellow found a loophole in terms of building heights, and so I think that's what we're dealing with here, and I see what's happening, but I'm just not convinced that this is a way that we can control it. I'm questioning that. So that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Herman, did you have something else?
It just seems like we're aiming arrows at another small business kind of situation. And I think we need to really be careful that we're not going to make it so restrictive that we put them out of business. It just appears that way to me.
Commissioner Lucy? Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Currently, Mr. Solero, are there any type of these businesses in the unincorporated county currently that would be impacted by this change that would be grandfathered in, or in their current operation?
I've looked through trying to determine, whether we've got an issue within unincorporated Washoe County. Certainly, we have bars, bar restaurants, or tavern restaurants within unincorporated Washoe County. There are a couple of examples I can think of that utilize a combination of bar top machines within their bar and still have some standalone slot machines as well.
So,
very limited number.
If we were to change this ordinance as it goes, would it require those businesses are based on what Mr. Liparelli said earlier, that they would be grandfathered in because they would be when they were licensed to operate, they were licensed under the original code, and this change would not predicate driving them out of business. Is that correct?
That is correct. We do have an option in here for a grandfathered tavern or a grandfathered bar tavern that contemplates just that. If you're in existence and you have a current license, you're grandfathered in as of April 20th, 2000.
So nothing we would do today, even if we were to pass this ordinance, would force any businesses out. What it would do, it would start creating consistency amongst and truly identifying true definitions of really what the business's intent for their primary use and their secondary uses really are, versus having this providing some clarity to truly what they're trying to achieve with the direction, and making building code and business license kind of coincide. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. This makes more sense, common sense, as we move forward, as we're drafting ordinances. We're not trying to put people out of business. What we're trying to do is create consistency amongst the region in regards to how people do business. And I think Commissioner Hartung is wrong. I mean, gaming parlors need to have probably their own identity and should be identified within our code and what a gaming parlor should be allowed to, where it should be allowed to. And maybe that's something that we need to discuss going forward. But going forward right now, we're living in such a gray area of not having something identified. It allows for some, as you would call it, Commissioner Hartung, some loopholes. And so I think it's our job is to close those loopholes and really find that consistency amongst, and then if this commission sees so fit, bring back issues and just really discuss a gaming parlor business license and what that looks like and how that would exist in the unincorporated area of our community. And for those taverns or businesses that are currently in operation, allow them to consistent and you know, because they have already been protected under that grandfathering of our ordinances. So at this point, you know, I've said it before, and I'm the one who's asked for this issue. I would bring forward again support for this. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. So let me just clarify that if you have a sense that there is a business that might fall under this, it is not our intention in any way to close any business, correct?
That is correct.
So any business that might fall under this, that just by circumstance of what they have is grandfathered in, so this is not going to impact them.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I'm not arguing, but I still see this as a solution looking for a problem.
I do too.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lucy, I still have you on here?
Madam Chair, you know, and I think we talk about enforcement, and enforcement is as with everything we do here in the county, is always complaint driven. I mean, we don't have enough staff to go and police every bar. We don't have enough staff. We don't have enough rangers to go to every park. We don't have enough. It's complaint driven, and so I don't feel that anything that we'll never have a level of enforcement, but we do have to have code that provides for proper direction going forward. So it's not about always looking back, it's about looking forward, how we're going to move forward in a functional, beneficial manner for the community. And not having code, it's not really about worried about enforcement, it's about what are we doing going down the path, because when I ride a bike, I usually try to look down the road where I'm going, not where I've been, but that's just me.
If you don't look where you're going, you break your ankle.
Then you break your ankle. Got that. See that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We do have some public comment, so I will call Mr. Michael Hillerby. Good afternoon, Mr. Hillerby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Hillerby on behalf of Nevada Restaurant Services, who you know better as Dottie's. And I appreciate you giving us a little more time than the standard 3 minutes to address some of the issues with the ordinance. Appeared before you at your last meeting or at the first reading of the ordinance and outlined some of our concerns with that. I found it interesting this morning in listening to the discussion about potential marijuana lounges that Commissioner Jung actually referred to this as the Dottie's ordinance, and it's certainly how we feel. We know we've seen these in many other places and feel like they're very much directed at Dottie's. It was also described as a David versus Goliath battle. I wish that were true because David won that one. We know the forces we're up against. They're considerable, and they've brought a great deal of weight to bear on this. But I do think it's important to point out some things. Again, we went through some of the specifics of the ordinance and our concerns. We'd be happy to answer questions about those. One of the comments that was made in the staff report was this would give the county a better opportunity to define and enforce. And one of the questions was, if there was a complaint about what was the primary business model or if a restricted licensee was following state law, we would argue the appropriate venue for that is the Gaming Control Board. That doesn't really need to be your job. It is not something you necessarily need to wade into. The definition of incidental has been the subject of debate and some pretty serious battles at the legislature and the Gaming Control Board for something in the order of longer than 5 decades. Most recently, that occurred in the 2013 legislature. AB 360 ultimately resulted in a study to look at this issue along with the emergence of technology. The report that came out at the end of that ultimately recommended that they didn't need any changes to that the existing gaming control laws, the long list, and I'm happy to provide a copy if you'd like it, in the gaming control ordinances, of the things each applicant must go through for each location and must continue to abide by. They must continue to operate in a suitable manner. If there's a concern, there's a mechanism for that. And again, not necessarily something the county, with your limited resources, has to take on. There's an opportunity to do that. Another thing with the idea of what's incidental and what's primary, and with respect to Commissioner Hartung, you have no way of knowing what's incidental or what's primary at any given Dottie's location, or any other sports bar for that matter. And the way the ordinance is drafted, because everyone will be grandfathered that's currently in business, the county will never know what the primary or incidental business is. A lot of the conversation we heard in the last few minutes was really about what a business physically looks like. Was it primarily a sports bar? What was the size of the menu? You have in your own code definitions of eating establishments, definitions of a kitchen, and I just want to point to the eating and drinking establishments, if I may, and I don't know if we can get this up on the screen or not. Under eating and drinking establishments, it talks about two different kinds. Convenience stores, which are, there we go, thank you, primarily engage in the preparation of retail sale of food.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Hillerby have a couple more minutes at least.
Yes, he does. We're giving Mr. Hillerby 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Primarily the retail food and beverage for use in the restaurant and have a drive-in. Similar kinds of language for full service. Primarily in the business of serving meals where customers stay more than an hour. I've not heard anybody say you're going to send county enforcement staff out to fast food restaurants to say, are you primarily serving people through the drive-in window or serving people sitting down? These are always problematic definitions, and yet we all sort of know what a fast food restaurant might look like. And again, the argument we made at the first reading, if someone's willing to make an investment in the community, hire people, get the appropriate licenses, pay their taxes, what's the problem? Why are we as concerned about specifics and definition of what they're primarily or incidentally involved in? You know, it might be interesting to talk to owners of quote-unquote traditional taverns, and again, we think the definition you have in county code right now is sufficient, and if you certainly want to expand that to some extent, there are ways to do that that don't necessarily target one particular business model such as Dottie's. But it might be interesting to talk to some of the owners of those places and find out if they're willing to give you that information at any given time period, a day or a week or a month. Are there times when, in fact, gaming is the primary income and it beats the sale of food and beverages at any particular time? And again, as long as someone has paid the necessary licenses, paying the taxes, employing people, do we really care what that business is? Do we care whether the grocery store sells more paper goods than milk at any given time, or a convenience store for that matter? I'll quickly go through a couple of the other arguments that were made. Again, the idea that is Dottie's playing by the rules? Again, getting all the local and state licenses that are required and approval by gaming control. The idea about the definition of, is it a quote-unquote real restaurant? Again, serving food. They have an oven that they use. The county definition of a kitchen includes that you have an oven and either a refrigerator and or a sink. That's in the county code. That's it to be considered a kitchen. We have an idea, if you want to start wandering down the idea of what defines that, do you have to have a deep fryer? Do you have to have other kinds of things? And lastly, the idea of regional uniformity. I also happen to represent the Regional Transportation Commission. Regional conformity is great. We've done that in transportation. We've done it in water and sewer, flood. You've all, and your counterparts in other local governments are still trying to deal with this tricky issue of fire. I guess the argument that 42-inch bar heights are a compelling regional governing issue doesn't hold much with me. It may with you, but again, we're going to argue, not sure how that rises to the level of needing regional harmony on 42-inch high bar height. Again, I'd be happy to answer questions and appreciate your time. Understand there's a lot of support for the ordinance, but want to make sure that we had an opportunity to raise some issues, and again, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hillerby. I also have on the public speakers list Mr. Michael Alonso, who, as I understand, is representing the opposite side in this. So, Mr. Alonso, we are also giving you 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Commission. I'm Michael Alonso. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Resort Association. With me today is Jessica Sferrazza, who's also representing the Resort Association. And what I really want to do in the time is cover some of the issues that have been raised. I want to remind everybody we're talking about a privileged license. So privileged licensees have to do things differently than other people. It's not a photo studio, it's a privileged license, and we set it up in state law and as well as local law. And what we've tried to do, what the Resort Association has been trying to do for some time, is to get that consistency so that these things can be enforced more uniformly. I understand the issue raised by Commissioner Hartung and also by the opponents about the Gaming Control Board, but the Gaming Control Board doesn't set the land use, and they don't decide what a tavern is or what it isn't. And that's why we have to go to the local government to deal with those definitions, whether it's a bar or a tavern. This happened in Clark County, it's happened in the city of Reno, and it's happened in the city of Sparks. And so when an applicant comes in and says they're a tavern to the Gaming Control Board under Washoe County Code, the Gaming Control Board doesn't go question whether or not it's a tavern. You're only allowed to have restricted gaming at a state law level in taverns, bars, saloons. You can have up to 15 machines, grocery stores, and drugstores, which are defined creatures, very specific, how much square footage they have to have. And nobody's ever going to argue whether or not gaming is incidental to a primary business in a grocery store or a drugstore, because they have to be 10,000 square feet and they have to meet all these other requirements, and clearly the gaming's incidental. When you get to a convenience store, you have 7 machines. That's all you're allowed. Doesn't matter what kind of a convenience store you are, you're allowed 7 machines. In a liquor store, you're allowed 4 machines. And so all we're trying to do is level the playing field and create some consistency, right? Are you a tavern? Slot parlors are not allowed. You can't take and put 15 machines in a room and say that's legal. The State Gaming Control Board isn't going to issue you a license. What gets you there is the designation as one of those things: a tavern, a bar, a saloon, a grocery store, a drugstore. So that's what we're trying to do, because people are taking advantage of those loopholes and they're not having a primary business. I want to repeat it, you cannot have a primary business be the slot parlor. It's just not allowed. But some of your questions, Commissioner Hartung, on the development code. What we're trying to deal with is the location that Dottie's or someone like Dottie's comes into that's an existing location. It already has gaming. We're not trying to deal with new construction where you'd come in and maybe the development code would help. They come into an existing location, take it over, in our experience, tear the bar out, tear the kitchen out, tear the dining room out, and put their model into play. There's already the bar top with the bar top machines. And in Washoe County, there isn't even, we don't think there are any of these locations. So we're talking about a situation where you go into the location and you make a decision to tear all those things out that are already in. And all we're saying is, if you want to do that, you get to have 7 slot machines, not 15, because you still have to have a primary business. In 2013, the law was changed in Washoe and Clark County. I understand what Mr. Hillary's talking about in the study, but the law was changed, SB 416. And what that did was change NRS 463-161. So if you're a new location coming in, not only do you have to have a permanent physical bar, but you have to have at least 2,500 square feet that is open and available for use by patrons. You have to have a restaurant which serves food ordered by patrons from tables or booths. This is state law. It was passed in 2013. You have to have a dining area with seating for at least 25 persons in rooms separate from the on-premises kitchen. And it has to include a kitchen that is operated not less than 12 hours each day. The establishment is open for business. So if somebody wants to come and build a new one, they have to have all these things in Washoe and Clark by state law in order to get the restricted gaming license. We're just trying to go back to the existing location that's had gaming, that's grandfathered under that statute, and say, okay, we're protecting everybody that's already here, you're grandfathered. But if you come in and you're going to rip out the bar and turn it into a slot parlor, then your choice is you can still do it. You're just going to only have to have 7 machines. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing. From an enforcement standpoint, we think that's a pretty simple thing to look at and say, is the bar there and the machines are in the bar top, or are they not? Was that 5 minutes?
Was that 5 minutes?
Yeah, that was his
5.
That went by fast.
You are really good.
I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may
Slipped right
have.
in. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Alonso. And so then I have one last public comment, Miss Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I am the United States President. To restrict the manner of alcohol sales. The Flamingo's no longer here. Fitzgerald's is no longer here. The Nugget is no longer here. There is a small Nugget. Harold's is no longer here. I wanted to mention Dottie's too, because I believe that they have no business. Their business has been slowed down so much because one day I wanted to go in to get a soda and potato chips and maybe a candy bar. She would not allow me to go in because I have a cart. But I understand that the business is going down, so she has paid nothing. One day I heard somebody say, well, I know they brought in 10 cents out of all the Dottie's businesses. Also, I just wanted to let you know the casinos in operating, they still have the slot machines and they still serve the alcohol while they're playing the slot machines. There has not been no limit on that at all. The alcohol is still being served to them while they're playing the slot machines. I went home and I could smell the liquor from my neighbors. They said they were at the casinos. It says here, a limited gaming operator. Who's the operator? The person who is playing the slot machines. And they're still served the alcohol while they're playing. But they didn't pay nothing. Who's going to pay for the alcohol? Who's going to pay for all that? Allow enforcement of gaming licenses. Oh, yes. Who's got the license? Who's going to sell the alcohol without somebody being, they don't have to pay nothing to play the slot machines. It's served to them. And allow enforcement of gaming licenses. Who has the operator? License applications. Have we really seen those? The community services, too.
Comment, we will bring it back to the board. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, the reason I brought up photography studios is because we had to, ultimately, because we had a lab, have an EPA license. And I was actually, I triggered an investigation by the EPA because I carried a gallon of fixer to the neighboring property who had a silver recovery unit, and they pressed a charge against us, which was dropped, of course, but that we were hauling hazardous waste. And so not just taking pictures, but we were actually hauling hazardous waste. And so it's that type of scenario where, again, it's a different type of activity triggered a different requirement for even having a federal license. We had to have a state, a local license, a state license, and then a federal license as well. So there are, in my mind, still some parallels. But talk to me briefly, Mr. Solero or Mr. Webb, about the requirements for a kitchen. Don't they have to have a grease trap and et cetera? Is that, because otherwise, I mean, a convenience store which has a little, hot dog turner kind of a thing, and they sell fast food. They don't have They don't have a grease trap, they don't have a grill, they do have a microwave, they might have a toaster oven, but they're not considered a restaurant. That's not their primary business.
For the Commissioner, through the Chair, the Health District actually regulates the requirements if you do have a commercial-type kitchen within a commercial establishment requiring grease trap and some of those other sorts of things. I believe the definition of kitchen within our development code is really specific more towards the residential use type related to a kitchen. So we do define what needs to be in a kitchen for other purposes related to having a single-family dwelling and an accessory dwelling unit on the same property. So that's where that definition within our land use planning comes in.
All right, so I'm allowed to have a microwave in my garage, still not have a kitchen.
Right.
Okay. Talk to me briefly about the 42-inch bar height. How does that fit for ADA standards? And I mean, when you have something that's 42 inches tall, how does that, I mean, I don't think that that's accessible for someone who's wheelchair bound.
So the way the code is written, actually, the way this is talking about is 12 at the 42 inch, which is a standard bar height. And then it allows for the additional items to be more at the lower height for ADA. And I can't recall exactly what that height is, but there is a range of heights within the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
So it allows that leeway within this to make sure that we are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or any purveyor that comes in for a building permit would be.
Okay. And again, I mean, I get this. This is a separate business type. I mean, there's no question it's a gaming parlor. It's not a tavern. It's not a restaurant. It's not a convenience store. You know, it's a gaming parlor. And so I understand that. And so I mean, those are all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Commissioner Hartung, sorry. Commissioner Herman, didn't mean to do that, and Commissioner Hartung, didn't mean to do that. Commissioner Lucy. Okay, I see no further discussion.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move to adopt ordinance number 1617 with the draft ordinance as presented in the staff report.
I will second, Madam Chair, but with just a small amount of discussion.
Okay.
And that is, I understand why this is being brought forward. I don't see that it affects anyone in Washoe County at this time, but I really think that we should have dealt with this in terms of land use and business type, and calling out the business type for what it is. You call a spade a spade. No different than they called our lab a lab. Even though it was associated with a photography studio, we had a lab, and that lab triggered specific requirements and specific licensure and inspections, periodic inspections, and we had to prove certain kinds of things. And I see this as a separate business type. So I understand where we're going with this, but I would really like to see us again call it out as that business type. You call a spade a spade.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I agree with Commissioner Hartung. Ms. Commissioner Hartung, I would love to work jointly with you to help identify what that works going forward in future months, and how we can address that within code and make some, because we've done that for the last couple of years. I think we've been doing a good job in cleaning up the code from what basically the sins of our fathers, and basically really not the sins of our fathers, but because of our community has changed. And we need to adjust for updated code and updated needs. So as we move forward, I see no problem with updating it to current standards. So.
Okay, and also under discussion, I would just say that I'm going to support this largely because I'm one of those people who believes that I can't preach regionalization to the cities unless I preach it to myself. I can't say to the cities, oh, well, we've got to think about this from a regional perspective, and now I'm saying, except on an issue that I want. And so I don't think this has any impact on us, but I think it's important from the perspective of it being a regional issue. Everyone else is supporting it, and therefore I will support it also. So seeing no more comments, I would ask those in favor signify by saying yes.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And now cast your vote on the screen, please, and then affirm your vote up above. Okay, the motion carries 3-1 with Vice Chair Jung missing, And so the motion carries. We will move on. Mr. Manager, where do you want to go now?
We would, at this point, go back to item 13.
Okay.
Item 13 is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending Washington County Code, Chapter 110, within Article 406, Building Placement Standards.
And Madam Chair, if I may, before we get into item 13 and have the clerk read this, can I just make a quick statement?
Yeah.
This is just housekeeping is what this is. This is a housekeeping in our ordinance where, again, we had a situation where we found a loophole. We had somebody find a loophole, and so this is really plugging one of those holes. And so it's just something that we're talking about constantly, is figuring out where those holes are. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
This will be Bill number 1804, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110, Development Code, within Article 406, Building Placement Standards, at Section 110.406.05, General, to modify the requirements applicable to measuring setbacks from certain easements by changing the requirement to measure setbacks from the edge of the easement when the easement is more than 20 feet wide, and by clarifying that when a county-maintained road is located outside of a recorded easement or right-of-way, the setback is measured from the edge of the road and for other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you. And with the board's approval, I would move to introduce Bill 1804 with the adoption, the second reading and adoption planned for April 24th, 2018.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
That then takes us to item 14, which is also an introduction and first reading. This is of an ordinance amending Washington County Code, Chapter 110, within Article 306, Accessory Uses and Structures.
Madam Clerk.
This will be Bill number 1805, an ordinance amending the Washoe County Code at Chapter 110, Development Code, within Article 306, Accessory Uses Structures, at Section 110.306.10, Detached Accessory Structures, to define how the height of an accessory structure is measured both when the structure is located within the required rear or side yard setback and when not located within any applicable setbacks, and other matters necessarily connected therewith and pertaining thereto.
Okay. Commissioner Hartung?
Madam Chair, thank you. I would move to introduce Bill number 1805 with the adoption and second reading to be heard on April 24th, 2018. And again, I would clarify, this is just a matter of housekeeping. It's a scenario that needed to be taken care of. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Manager, I think we're going to 17 now.
We are.
Which is a public hearing.
Glad that you're tracking me. This is a public hearing. This is a master plan amendment case, WMPA 17-0012. A hearing and discussion to, one, adopt an amendment to the Spanish Springs Area Plan to modify policy SS.1.3F by removing the date limitation that currently limits the general commercial regulatory zone to properties with a regulatory zone of GC prior to August 17, 2004. And two, to authorize the chair to sign the resolution to adopt the amendment. If adopted, the amendment will be effective if and when the Regional Planning Commission finds that it conforms to the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan.
Okay, commissioners, does anybody want a presentation from staff on this issue?
No, Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
This is in Spanish Springs. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have public comment.
Oh, okay.
Miss Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. The Spanish Springs Area Plan to modify policy. Well, you don't really say what we're talking about here, but you also mentioned currently limits the general commercial. Are we going to be talking about small businesses, large businesses? Are they really in business? Do they have the license to sell? Do they have the license to actually be open in business? Has anybody actually gone into this to check it out? The Regional Planning Commission finds that it conforms to the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. What is that supposed to mean? It doesn't really say nothing. I just wanted to let you know that most of the businesses, the large businesses, the small businesses, no matter if it's a gas station or a small 7-Eleven store, are they really in business? Who did we hire? Are they really hired to be in the business itself? Do they get their payroll checks? Do they get their money that they need to purchase? Are they really purchasing in that store? Because I'm getting so many complaints. They paid me nothing. They just walked out with a whole bunch of bags, but it's full. Well, whose fault is that? Why would they allow them to walk into the business and have them walk out with a whole bunch of things or stuff that they stole off the shelves? Who's going to pay for it? Where's that money going to come from? I've been getting lots and lots of complaints from the large department stores, Ross, Burlington Coat Factory. I've been getting so many complaints from Big Lots that they don't pay nothing. They walk in, steal it, and walk out the door with it. They still don't pay for the items that they have stolen. They don't call the police. The police, when they show up, they just allow them, they're going to be arrested. Well, the chains and their handcuffs are put onto the bodies, and guess what? They are released right there by the cars.
I'm looking for
Madam Chair, I would
Commissioner Hartung.
move to approve as written in the staff report. Again, this is the scenario in Spanish Springs on the corner of La Posada and Pyramid that was historically public zoning and is now general commercial, and so we're just trying to get some cleanup going on. Or actually, it was neighborhood commercial, and we want to change it to general commercial, which is what the parcels across the street all are.
Okay. Commissioner Lucy?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, please cast your vote and confirm your vote up on the top. Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Jung absent. And Mr. Manager?
Madam Chair, item 19 has been removed from today's agenda. So the next item is item 20, which is public comment.
Look at the screen.
Oh.
You guys.
Look at that.
I'm just so excited
Is
that
that
we
a
get to
dashing
see
dog or what?
the supermodel and then the guy holding him.
Madam Chair, and this is, and Liparelli's going to pull us over. Mr. Liparelli's going to yell at us, but that's Little Copper. Definitely the better looking of the two of us. He was just so well behaved and cute, and I would like to note on record he did not have any accidents on me. I was thrilled, even though they were not my clothes.
How old is he?
He's just they didn't tell me, but I don't think he can be any more than 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. I don't know the exact, but he was very, very, very even tempered.
Both animals up on that screen are just
Very good. Well, this was part of item number 21, so I'll say that we move to item 21.
Thank you.
And so that was item 21, Commissioner comments. We could not resist the opportunity to show the world that dashing dog, the four-legged one.
The double chin. More chins than I need.
All right. Mr. Manager, now we'll go
I'd
back
like to go to item 20, which is public comment.
Okay, public comment. Miss Kathy Brandhorst.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to continue from where I left off. You know, all those casinos that were closed down. The operations of the casinos are no longer in business. They have been closed down. But since they put in the rooms to be rented, there's been a lot of shooting up there where they have the rooms for rent. I also wanted to let you know, the bank robberies are also very, very crucial. And the bank robberies are mostly, people who have more than $1,000 in their bank accounts. And because they're a victim, they will be able to take that money out of their bank accounts and force them homeless. This has been an issue even at the mission. I went down there because I need phone service and I needed other services too because I don't know what's happening to my money, my checks. I am on a disability check and it's $1,000 a month, but I have not received it. So I've been going through it too. I only have 19 days left on C Street. And hopefully, I'll be able to get off the streets by the time the 19 days is over. And I just wanted to tell you, the problem is not going to go away until we can solve it. I went to Nevada State Bank and Sparks, and they told me that you did a very good job. We already have over 500 of the death row dead and gone, and hopefully, we can continue to make the United States safer. But we are still having a few of you still alive, and you still have the bank robberies going on at the banks. If they don't have your name on the checks, you should not be cashing the checks at all. You need to leave the money alone. You need to leave their bank accounts alone because they're only victims because they saw you kill, murder, torture somebody in the process, and so now you need to steal all their money and force them homeless. This is the only way that you could force them to, I couldn't think of the
Thank you, Ms. Brandhorst. Mr. Manager, we'll close public comment because we have no more listed, and we'll bring it back to the board.
Do you want to go back to 21?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay, so we'll go to item 21, which is Commissioner County Manager's announcements.
Do you have anything to add? I have one thing to add. I would like to see if we can't make sure we have the item for the indoor tennis courts on the June agenda. If we might have to put it on the last meeting of June, because I know that's a short month. But if we could get it on the June agenda, that would be perfect. So thank you. Commissioners?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lucy.
I just want to continue to thank the Humane Society for allowing, Commissioner Hartung to participate and become the supermodel that he's always strived to be. Now that we've got a child actor, amazing child actor that sits with us on a daily basis and a supermodel, it's really starting to elevate this commission as a whole. Realistically, I just want to thank the Humane Society for all that they do, not only taking care of those wonderful puppies, but commissioners just like him. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Hartung?
Yes, and no animals were injured.
I'm so happy to hear that.
In the making of this feature, other than me, my pride a little bit of standing up there in
a polo shirt carrying a cute little
polo
dog.
shirt carrying a
How
cute
could
little
your pride
dog.
be hurt?
Well, it showed my double chin, of course, and therein lies the problem.
All right.
But I would like to, in all seriousness, Commissioner Herman mentioned earlier that there was some methodology that was used by Salt Lake City to drain down the Great Salt Lake. I'd certainly like to hear what that is. I don't know whether staff can bring that back to us. Obviously, anything can be done when you have a budget. We live inside of a budget, but I will also tell you that Commissioner Lucy and I have had some brief comments with, I'll call it a neighboring entity, about potentially, and the city of Reno, of course, has, and they've had these same conversations. It's actually been happening concurrent, and I've been working with staff, we've been working with staff to deal with some possibilities that there may be someone who would like to purchase the effluent coming out of the Reno Stead plant. And I'm hoping that staff will come back and bring us some of the things that we're doing. With a developer that's putting some stuff in along Chickadee is already talking about potentially putting in a dry line, a portion of that line. So, but you still have an issue of the amount of water that you can move through a relatively small straw. Even an 8-inch line is not a very big conveyance method. So I'll have staff bring this back as soon as we can. I'd like to hear all of the options. I'm open to hearing any options that we can afford. I mean, therein lies the key.
Right.
It's what we can afford. So it's not easy to drain a terminus lake. There is not just a plug that you can pull and you can't go to a dam. So I'm hoping that we can.
Impossible might be a word.
Madam Chair.
I'm hoping that we can bring that back.
One other thing too, I would like to ask staff if we could get an update from community services in regards to more discussions about the stormwater discussions that we've constantly been having in regards to stormwater districts throughout the area, where we are. Can I just get an update from staff on that? As it relates to, because we did get some more complaints from kind of the Galena area, kind of around the Browns Creek, Thomas Creek, Whites Creek area. What some potential options are to deal with stormwater up there, whether that's a GID, very similar to Commissioner Hartung's district, and also down in the Pleasant Valley, Hidden Valley area. I'd like to address some of those concerns and just see what we can do going forward. So.
Okay, Commissioner Hartung, did you have something?
Yeah, just to dovetail on Commissioner Lucy's request, I completely agree, and staff will need to wait for the map that we've asked for from Western Regional Water that Regional is working on for us, that Dr. Jeremy Smith is working on. So that's going to be, and that way we understand where the water is trying to come from and trying to move to. That'll be a very important part of that conversation. But I think that's a broader conversation that we need to have as a regional agency, creating a regional stormwater map and a regional stormwater, and they're going to be separate utilities in each little area. But I think that you're spot on, Commissioner. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public or commissioner comments, we are adjourned.